sitting right here, right? Yeah. You're not doing presentations, so when you go behind the stage. What?
All right, we are going to get started. So thank you everyone for coming out. This is our second community forum. We are not going to do the opening presentation we did last time because it seems that we have the majority of a similar group of people here this evening. So we want to get right to the public's ability to come up and comment and share ideas. So the first thing I want to say is we've had a lot of productive conversations, given a lot of feedback we've gotten from a lot of different places over the last several days, and those discussions are continuing to happen in small groups with the Board of Education and the administrative team, because we are, exhausting even further every single possibility that comes our way. So April 8th is our board meeting, where we will have both an executive session and a public portion of the meeting, and we hope to have some specific information to give you at that time, because certainly no one wants to delay providing you with information, but again, there are lots of conversations happening and lots of alternative ideas being explored. So I wanted to leave you with that this evening, and certainly we're going to allow people to come up and make a comment and share ideas, and anything that you ask we'll write down, certainly, and we're listening and we're taking notes, because the things that you brought forward are things that we're having conversations about behind the scenes. So while you may not hear anything right away, that's because all of this information is being compiled to then have those dialed-in conversations about, what our next steps will possibly be. So without further ado, just be mindful of the people that also may want to make a comment. So, we want to make sure that everybody gets an opportunity to come up here and share. So the mic will be right on the podium, and we'll get started.
Hello, thank you for letting us speak tonight. I don't want to call out my name specifically because the cause is greater than one person's name, and this really isn't about the parents. At the end of the day, it is about the children. However, there are concerns that will affect the entire community, and make no mistake, it will not just affect these 3 schools. These 3 schools are just the beginning of a bigger plan that has been going on for a very, very long time. So before I start, I would like to welcome the newest superintendent in how many years, I can't remember, Miss Jessica Alphone, and our Vice President of the Board of Ed, Jacqueline Tobacco, and let us please not forget the esteemed Frank Capone. All right, now I'll get on to what really matters here. So first of all, and this is a smaller drop in the bucket, the fact that certain members of this board decided to play partisan politics and ended up getting lawsuits filed because of it, because they were preaching family values, because, only a certain kind of family counts. Secondly, there's the fact that it will impact community safety. Community safety is dependent on an education. And you know what happens when schools shut down, when schools are consolidated? Poverty goes up. You know what happens when poverty goes up? Crime goes up. And that is a safety concern. And honestly, property value really doesn't matter. I don't think any elderly person really cares about how much equity they have in their home. They want a community they can feel safe in. And finally, I'd like to bring up the fact that another aspect of this safety is traffic congestion, because traffic congestion causes accidents. And you know what happened? Not even 2 years ago? One of your crossing guards was hit by a car. Subsequently, she still suffered from hip pain. And she just went through a personal tragedy that I will not speak to because it's not my business. And I just wonder if any of you called her to check in on her. And no, that is not me asking you a question. I have one last thing to say, and then I will yield to the much more educated people here. This is a reworking of a quote from a Pulitzer Prize winning artist and future poet laureate, and forgive me for butchering it, Charlotte, don't give me donkey. You lied about the moral cause, you lied about the murdering, you lied about the lawsuits and the taxes, all this perjury. You lied about constituents trying to offer you some help. Forget a Q&A. This is a lifelong question for yourselves. Meet the board.
Hi everyone, I'm Kristen Rooney, proud Middletown parent, let's say. I liked what she said that I don't want to say my name because we're all here together. I want to thank everybody who's here for coming out and whoever is watching on YouTube. I wanted to start with an introduction on what Save Middletown Schools is. Save Middletown Schools is a movement that started within 24 hours of the first rumors of our beloved schools being in danger of closing their doors. The team contains Middletown citizens from all backgrounds: tech people, business people, artists, printers, construction workers, PR professionals, organizers, educators, PTA volunteers, grandparents, coaches, child psychologists, to name just a few. We have representation from schools. We have representation from schools across the district, as well as retirees and adults with no students in our school system working on our team. We are organized into teams working side by side with people we did not know before this movement erupted, and are working together as a community to analyze all available information and to come up with a plan to address the very real problems in Middletown, without closing schools, without firing teachers, and without making taxpayers pay the price for this. We will not accept a rushed plan and demand transparency and input into a way to move forward in an organized and thoughtful way. We are doing so in the light of day. All of our work is public and available to anyone interested. Our work is guided by integrity, empathy, transparency, inclusivity, collaboration, and respect. If you're interested in joining the effort, please visit our website, savemiddletownschools.org, and sign up. The more hands, the better. We can, and we will, accomplish our goal of ensuring that Middletown continues its long tradition of community-based education. Because I believe in full transparency, I think it's important to point out a list of things that are actually included in Plan A, so you can understand it is not just about closing schools. The vast majority of the plan saves money by cutting valuable jobs, programs, and services. It is evident that both Plan A and Plan B contain a laundry list of cuts that affect every school and every student. And this fact, and the fact that Thompson and Thorne will be over capacity, is a serious issue for all students, not just Navesink, Leonardo, and Bayshore. You may have seen this posted on social media today. I'm just going to read you the list in case you didn't get to see it because you're at work. Middletown School District's budget cuts are not about closing schools. They want to fire our incredible teachers, staff, and cut programs children depend on across the district. And here's the list of what's included: classroom teachers, administrators, supplemental services, interventionists, CSTs, counselors, anti-bullying specialists, student assistance coordinators, nurses, safety officers, secretaries, custodial staff, co-curricular stipends for sports and club budgets, elementary band, security directors, technology teachers, summer programs, Chromebook replenishment, ISS teachers, registered behavior technicians, an art therapist, an assistant network manager, some Class 3 officers, reduced student services, no generators for elementary buildings, and no paving of school driveways and parking lots. And to the concerned public, for anyone who couldn't join in person tonight, we're hearing that there is a perception that your opinion is only significant if you are physically here or if you directly email Dr. Alphone and the board. So please, if you have concerns and you're not here, send an email. We have over 400 people watching this forum on YouTube currently, and this room holds, I believe, 500 people. We'll be updating you throughout the night with the YouTube number. Dr. Alphone, we'd ask that maybe you move the time of these forums so that they don't directly conflict with sports and activities. We've had local soccer clubs and other teams make special arrangements tonight to excuse players from practice so that their parents could be here today, and we appreciate that. If we move the time to 7:30 or later, it would make it much easier for people to physically be here if that is what you view as truly important. We would also like to ask that any emails sent out that seem intended to divide our town be stopped. Pitting our senior citizens against parents of school-aged children is not going to help us move forward together. These are two vulnerable communities that we hold dear to our hearts. With that, I want to hand it over to the people who have been working tirelessly since that first traumatic BOE meeting to present ideas that can make up a plan that allows us all to sleep at night and time to plan for the long term. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Scott McPherson. I'm here to share with you a real alternative plan that came to light by the hard work of many people. What is unique about this alternative plan is it will not close our schools, it will not fire our teachers or staff who we love, and it will not raise taxes. Dr. Alfone, in her presentation on the proposed budget, had a slide that said the deficit was approximately $9.8 million. So let's make it simple. The problem as I see it is we find at least $9.8 million and we do not close schools, we do not fire teachers, and we do not raise taxes. The Middletown Board of Education owns a lot of property in Middletown. The recent sale of the St. Mary's Modern Day property was instrumental in the formulation of this alternative plan. And here it is. The Board of Education owns that property. They, just like Modern Day and St. Mary's, sell it to the town and or the county, preserve it for open space, and we move on. And we were the ones who came up with this plan, not the Board of Education, although this has been done numerous times by other Board of Educations throughout the state. In fact, Henry Hudson sold property to the county that added to Hartshorn Woods Park. Toms River currently is selling its building to Ocean County to help close a budget gap. The sale of the Modern Day property was 20 acres for $11.75 million. And someone had whispered in my ear, and I don't know if this is true, that sale, the number was lower because of something that had to do with the Diocese of Trent. Now, I don't know that to be true, but let's use that math for this alternative plan. So that breaks down to $587,500 an acre. Some of the property that the Board of Education owns are two distinct properties on Kings Highway. One is near the intersection of Kings Highway and Sleepy Hollow Road, over near Normandy Road. It's where the railroad tracks are, where the Navy Road is, that funky kind of intersection when you go down East Road. So that's one tract of land, it's approximately 10 acres. The other property that's on Kings Highway is approximately 8 acres. It's woods, it's located right behind Village Elementary Schools. Both lots, wooded lots. Both properties, wooded lots. If you take those 18 acres, because the Kings Highway behind Village is 8, so you take those 18 acres, you multiply it by $587,500, which is what St. Mary's and Modern Day received, that equals $10,575,000. And where I come from, $10,575,000 is more than the $9.8 million budget. So you do that simple math, and there you go, deficit eliminated, budget gap closed, we end this discussion. Yeah. But wait, there's more. I feel like an infomercial. The Board of Education also owns approximately 2.5 acres behind Fairview Elementary School, many acres surrounding New Monmouth Elementary School and Middletown High School South. The point is that there's plenty of Board of Education owned property available to be used in this plan. It's up for you to decide. And please do not misconstrue what I'm saying. I'm not saying sell this property to a contractor for more new home construction. What I'm saying is just like the modern day St. Mary's property, sell it to the town and or county and or both. Use the open space trust fund, Green Acres funding, leave it as open space. Board of Education board members, because you are the 9 that get to decide this. We're asking you, begging you, imploring you to not close our schools, not fire our teachers and staff, and not raise our taxes. Let's have a real discussion, come up with a master plan, get input from the entire Middletown community, and let's not do this with a 6-week deadline hanging over our heads. This alternative plan clearly solves your deficit problem. $10,575,000 that can be made from selling property is clearly more than a $9.8 million budget deficit. Let's end this discussion right now, and let's stop putting the financial difficulties of this district squarely on the back of the kids in Leonardo, Navesink, and Bayshore. Someone shared with me a newspaper article from the Asbury Park Press yesterday about Tom's River, their financial difficulties, and I think that was one of the schools mentioned up in Dr. Alphone's slides. And the superintendent of the Tom's River Regional School District, he was quoted in the press saying, quote, "Our children aren't a statistic." And he's right, our children are not a statistic. Let's stop trying to make it one. Selling property, it's a real, viable, alternative plan. They just did it with St. Mary's and Mater Dei. Why not do it here? And that plan does not close schools, it does not fire teachers and staff, it does not raise taxes. I think everyone can get behind that.
Hello, my name is Jay Bartlett, and I would like to start again by thanking the administration and the board for hosting these forums. Last week, I rose to urge that more time was needed to develop a fulsome plan for the future of Middletown schools. As an example of that, I pointed out that if Bayshore were to be closed as a middle school, both Thompson and Thorne would immediately become overcrowded, which would impact every single family in Middletown with a student in grades 7 or below. And last week, we did see that the administration updated its frequently asked questions and provided some data and some historical average enrollments for Thorne and Thompson over the past 15 years. Thompson, its stated capacity is 930 students. And the frequently asked questions said that its average enrollment over the past 15 years has been 950 students. And further noted that there were 4 years when Thompson educated more than 1,000 students. I'm guessing the point of this response was to demonstrate that at least one of the district's 3 middle schools has operated at numbers over their capacity. But just because one middle school has at times been over capacity in the past, I don't think that means we should intentionally overcrowd now 2 middle schools in this district. I looked at the historical enrollment a bit further by pulling information from the district's own annual financial reports. And in last week's meeting, I noted that if Bayshore were to be closed, cramming about 2,000 middle school students into these 2 buildings would result in those buildings combined on a district-wide basis at 107% of their listed capacity. And that was based on current numbers. Now, since the district has started to use 15-year average numbers in its responses to frequently asked questions, Anyone want to venture a guess what the utilization rate would have gone to without Bayshore, using the past 15-year average enrollment in the middle schools here in Middletown? It would have been 122%. And there are some years in which middle school utilization would have been over 130% without Bayshore's classrooms available. And as shocking as at least these numbers seem to me, also keep in mind that the district's own planning expert back in 2020 recommended a utilization rate at the middle schools of not higher than 85%. I just looked this up today, but the high schools themselves are at under 75% right now, and you are going to, in the meantime, crowd our middle schools into just 2 schools. I think regardless of the specific numbers, no one seems to be disputing that Plan A will overcrowd middle schools, and I, for one, am happy to say, I just think that's a bad idea. I also don't think this is enough for somebody to just come up and talk about problems, and we're also here to talk about solutions. And I got myself thinking about what other districts have done in the midst of budget crises. And I remembered, as was pointed out just before, I looked at the headlines that were included in the presentation from 2 weeks ago, and noted, as was noted before, that almost half of those headlines talked about one place. It was Tom's River. So I figured, let me look into that a little bit more. I happen to be from Tom's River, went to Tom's River schools, as did my wife, and parents were public educators in the Tom's River School District, and my sister-in-law currently is a teacher there, so it's a place we know well. And, it's a place that's also facing a number of different challenges in Middletown, for sure. It's also lost a lot more state aid than Middletown has. But since the tentative budget called out, Tom's River, and it was spoken about earlier, one other thing I would note is that they are not proposing to close any schools in town. Not in the past, and not now. In fact, in that same newspaper article that was just talked about, that same superintendent quoted that the operating cost, when you exclude the cost of the staff that works in the school, the operating cost of keeping a school building open is less than 1/10 of 1% of their operating budget. So, what did they do in the midst of a crisis? Yes, they sold land. They sold land first in 2023 to Thompson Township. Then they're selling an office building now to the County of Ocean. And we have that resource available here in Middletown, as was just discussed. And what we need now, we need time. Time to come up with a long-term strategic plan for the future of Middletown schools. Is selling land a quote-unquote one shot to fill a budget hole? Yes, it is. But I would argue that we only have one shot to come up with a long-term strategic solution for the future of Middletown students, and now is the time for more time. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Pam Thompson. I am a parent of a village 3rd grader and a preschooler. I don't recognize any of the parents in this room, but I am here as a village parent to stand up for the parents of Madison, Bayshore, Middletown for the school, specifically. So to close schools here is a disservice to every Middletown family that has a middle school child or younger. It's horrible that your letter, Dr. Alphonse, did not arrive until just 2 hours before the meeting on March 18th. People did not have time to provide their feedback. They did not have time to arrange for childcare so that they could attend the meeting. And it was also held in a small room, which makes it seem like It was all done on purpose, so that there could be no community involvement, no feedback, and, oh, oops, you couldn't get there because you didn't have childcare. I think that's what you wanted. You didn't want any community involvement or feedback. You just wanted this done and that's that. So I think it was all done on purpose. Also, I found it interesting that while your letter encouraged us to watch online, it did not give any information on how to access it. Again, all done on purpose. To keep us out of the loop until the last minute. How do you think that Bayshore would get renovated in just a few weeks, from the end of June till the end of August? How would that happen? I do not believe that this is exciting, as you call it. I do not believe that this is an adventure, as you call it. It is not an adventure for anyone. For our kids, no matter what part of town they are from. Middletown.
My name is Carrie Christensen, and I'm a parent to 2 children in this district. Since last week, every day, my 3rd grader gets off the bus, and the first question out of his mouth is, "Mommy, did we save our schools yet?" And every day, my reply is the same. Not yet, but all the mommies and daddies are fighting so very hard to make that happen. And while I know that many community members across this district, parents, grandparents, and concerned citizens are doing the same, I ask you, Dr. Alphone, and the members of this board, are you too doing the same? Are you fighting to uphold the oath that you made, and I quote from your own website, to work as a united community to empower each student by providing an engaging, inclusive, and safe educational environment? Are you talking with other districts going through similar budget shortfalls like we are? Have you talked with the teachers union to see how best to support your teachers and students throughout this process? Or are you only reaching out to see if they would take a pay freeze? Why is Middletown the only school in the district that has a paid government lobbying firm? Isn't that what our local elected officials are for? Are you not talking with them to work together, united as one for the betterment of this entire town? I don't know that you are. Because if you were, you may have had many plans that came to mind that were a far better option than the one put in front of us. I recently had a conversation with a former mayor of another town, as all of us parents who may not be as expert in the behind the scenes of what's going on, we're doing our best to educate ourselves and learn how we can be of support to you. So I reached out to a mayor who has been watching this very closely, what's happening, and perhaps a case study of what not to do in a district. And he said something so simple, yet so striking to me. He said, "In my way of thinking, we should always be doing something interesting to try and attract young families. The parents of elementary age students are often the most involved in our community because of the length of time they will be with us. So I was always talking with my parent community, the school board, the unions, and we worked together to pass budgets." He said, "When I was mayor, we worked with the Board of Education to help fund things that would help our town as a whole. When they needed new turf, they stepped in. If they needed a new bus lane, they helped. They funded police officers for their district. Have you talked to Mayor Perry about the items that could be shifted to the township?" We all now know, thanks to the work of everyone in this room, that we have a pretty large amount of land you're sitting on, and a district with an open space fund. So it feels like a pretty easy Band-Aid to find to keep our doors open. And while our problems go far beyond the reduction of state funding that you all like to blame, and we know isn't actually the real problem here, we do know state funding is an issue. Districts all around us have public education funds to help bridge the gap of budget deficits. In just 1 week, the Save Middletown Schools mission has mobilized like something I've never seen before. Had you started these conversations with your parent community 5 years ago, when this was all projected to happen, we could have been much more proactive with a solution rather than the reactive solution you have chosen to push forward in the most irresponsible fashion. You have a motivated and invested group of individuals who are ready to fight with you. We don't want to fight you. We are appreciative of the time that you take to volunteer away from your loved ones, away from your job. We want to help you. We are here. We are not going anywhere. Please, I urge you to seriously consider opening your doors to us. Do not slam the doors shut literally on your schools and your students without ever asking us for the help. Allow us a seat at the table with you to build a better path forward for all of Middletown. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Eric Arslan and I live on Farley Avenue. Since last week's meeting, Dr. O'Fone, your words have been bouncing around in my head, and I'm not saying this just for a fact, I really have been thinking. Because you started with the term, the greater good. And I'm thinking to myself for the last week, what is the greater good? I've truly been contemplating this, it's a really deep question. And I landed on this. I can honestly say there are two things that above almost everything else represent the greater good. The first one is children. There is almost no better investment There is almost no better investment society can make than in educating the next generation in an environment that gives them consistency, normalcy, comfort, and the necessary resources to thrive. And up there with investing in our children is the people that educate them, the teachers. So one of the last places I feel we should look to save money is at the expense of students, their resources, and teachers. Because our children and their teachers are the greater good. So a quick illustration of what might happen if we continue on this path is New York City. My family moved to Middletown in April 2020 because of the pandemic. And why did we land here? The most heaviest weighted thing and the reason we landed here was our schools. My daughter was lucky enough to attend Navison. If we had a concern, an issue, something we were worried about, the response was immediate. I remember once getting a call less than 30 minutes after an email. I was continually amazed at the investment of everybody at Navison. That continued to Bayshore, where my daughter is now an 8th grader. Another school I'm so grateful for. The involvement by her teachers, her guidance counselor who has made the effort to really know her and know what she needs, and the administrators is uplifting and a godsend. And I share this from a very important lens, that of someone whose daughter went to school in New York City, where we lived before the pandemic. The difference in schooling is immeasurable. My wife and I say one of the main issues with the New York City public school system is that it feels like there are too many people all fighting for too little resources. And that's what I'm afraid is going to happen, or has already started to happen here. I'm afraid that quick responses to concerns will stop. I'm afraid that the guidance counselors knowing our children will stop. There'll be less facilities, less teachers, and less overall resources for our children. Since my daughter is in 8th grade, the change shouldn't really impact my family, but it does. My daughter has cried a number of times, and I'll say she kept asking me this week, I want to speak, I really want to speak. And she didn't want to say the same thing that everyone else has been saying, but I'll just quickly say what she has said to me time and time again this week. She needs a teacher, and she needs the way that teacher at Bayshore has helped her, or helped another student. Continually this week, I've been hearing stories. On the way over here, she was telling me a story. And she needs the teacher, and I'm not going to get into naming all the teachers, etc. But her love for her teachers is amazing. And she worries about her friends in earlier grades, both at Bayshore and in Ames. And she worries about her teachers who've been instrumental in her maturing and growing. My wife and I worry about all of the kids whose lives are going to once again be thrown into turmoil. And all of us are already seeing that. This moment has left a pall of constant, endless anxiety over Middletown. We can change that, and we can avoid eventually feeling like we live in New York City. In closing, I'd also like to mention I hope that the final 2 sessions aren't just listening, but will allow for us to be presented with a new plan by Dr. Alford and the board. I truly appreciate that you guys are listening to us. And I also just want to acknowledge this community is amazing, and I really appreciate all the effort that our community has done, how we've come together. But what's really important is this whole process is for naught if the intent is only to let us speak without us all taking action. When something is important enough, governments find a way and the budget to do it. I've seen it time and time again. Our children and the teachers that educate them are the greater good. Let's make sure we treat them that way and show them that they are indeed important to us. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm just a guy from Google Earth throwing polygons. Look, Mr. Capone, I probably vote the way you vote. I would say I'm on your team, but on this, I am not with you. I see the undercurrent here way too clearly. I grew up here. I talk to people. I'm honest. They speak to me. Thumbs have been on the scales for years in Middletown, but it's been in a way that is acceptable. It's getting a little too overt, to ignore. So I've been working with a team on the capacity data and the made up stuff that comes out of the Board of Ed office to make a school look full and efficient. And it helps create a narrative, right? These schools are under capacity, these schools are at capacity. And, it's a little bit of a fuzzy science, but, you can see where it's been doctored for decades, basically, to create, inequity in the system, which is not really something that I like to focus on. But, it shows motives, and it's disgusting. So if you want to proceed with any kind of credibility, you have to do a lot better. If this were a company, your finances are garbage, your operations in the office are trash, and your PR and marketing are tone deaf and condescending, it's disgusting. What you're conducting is basically a political calculation, right? So if you just piss off that side of town, everybody else on this side of town will hide. So these folks went in a fight, and these folks went in a flight. They didn't come to my school yet, so I'm gonna chill and lay low. It's smart politics, but long term, it's terrible for the community. I'm not naive. I know politics invades everything. But this is a disgusting, one-sided overreach that's just too obvious to ignore. Mr. Capone, you were pissed when kids were used as pawns during the pandemic, and I was all with you. Get the masks off, get them back in, right? Stop using our kids as pawns. What is this? What sucks for me is I can too clearly follow the breadcrumbs through the channel, from Alphone to Capone and up. I'll not enumerate what's up. It's clear to me. Also, unfortunately for me, I did my master's thesis at Georgetown in real estate. And I wrote it about the Route 36 corridor redevelopment. I know all the redevelopment opportunities over there. It seems obnoxiously coincidental that we're choosing to close schools in that area while we're simultaneously pursuing aggressive redevelopment, which I like. I like redevelopment. I went to school for real estate. I'm pro, but we need capacity in schools. My phone closed and I had to open it back up. All right, so I've been through the numbers. I'm in our budget and data group, and I've been in Discord for like more hours than I care to admit, with all the data nerds going through spreadsheets. So, if you wanted to balance this budget, there's so many options available to you. Let's be honest, if you had an ounce of creativity, you could do it. Basically, what I'm here to tell you is I'm keeping score. So if you bring school closures to a vote, and if you vote for them, you are clearly part of some political machine that's just gotten too disgustingly obvious for you. SOS tried to tell me not to do this. To call school closures a appropriate action for a 5% budget deficiency? I mean, it's so pathetically transparent and implausible that you're insulting our intelligence by even presenting it. If you want to move forward in good faith, there's so many smart people here. So many. They are working on it, and they have figured things out. And they're also finding a lot of errors in the system. So I think what we're headed towards, if the system works, is a fork in the road, okay? And if we're headed towards the side where we have transparency, I encourage you to be on the good side. I know he can put pressure on you, put you on crappy committees, make you do bad work. He could, basically stop everything that you want to do, right? Squash all your ambitious ideas on the board. Power through it, I beg you. And for you guys, if you think Tony Perry's on your side, just call him. Ask him to stop this. He could. He's letting this go. He's doing this political thing. I'm a little annoyed because I've just done too much math for you guys, and really it's not our job to figure out how to figure out a 5% budget. That's enough out of me, thanks.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tara Cregan. This is now the third time I've come up to speak to you. I'm a parent of New Monmouth, the New Monmouth Port Monmouth Elementary School. And I'm here to let you know that I stand before you on behalf of that school because the other parents don't want you to come because they believe this is an exercise in futility. They believe that you have your mind made up because we've been through this. We've been through the meetings where you closed down the school, We showed up to forums just like this. Somebody pretended to take notes. It was Dr. George at the time. All nonsense, but the mind was already made up. What I'm gonna say then to the newest board members, and the board members that are actually listening, hearing us, you know this is wrong. You know we haven't been supplied with any numbers. It's not our job, as the last speaker just said, to come up with options. The option was let's fire 120 teachers or close down 3 schools. And then in 3 more years, we're gonna close down 2 more schools, so 5 schools. And my understanding is that the ultimate goal is 4 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, and 2 high schools. Who decides that? Why do you think that you get the option to decide that for us? The last week we were here, somebody had stated to you that you were handed a baton. You are handed a baton, not a scepter. Listen to the community. There are options. Just because you don't want the other options, and this is the way of your path, you don't live here. You do not live here. Now, if you'll excuse me, as much as I would love to stay, we have our own PTA meeting because we are talking about how to raise the funds for that playground we still don't have, okay?
Hi, my name is Laura Vallier, 187 Monmouth Avenue. I think you guys have heard me speak a couple times. Just to throw a shout out, I want to throw a shout out to the principals and administration in the 3 most affected schools right now. Not only are they having to support students, but they're also having to support their staff who have job insecurity right now. And speaking personally, I know exactly how that feels and how distressing it is. So thank you to Mr. Curtis, Mr. Herbert, and Mr. or Mrs. Leonardo, principal.
Hi, my name is Madeline Ballard, and I'm a proud 4th grader at Mason. I have 2 sisters at Bayshore. On that big Tuesday where we all got the news, I was home sick. I found out when my sisters got off the school bus. They were so upset, I was completely confused. I asked Mom what was happening, and she was confused too. They said that all of Bayshore was upset. They had so many questions that were unanswered. How my friend group would be split up? What about honors classes? What if we don't have enough space for us? What about National Honor Society? We need a teacher to recommend us? Which teachers will come with us? Will Mr. Martino be okay? He doesn't have tenure. What about Miss Tischler? She's been there a long time. Does she be okay, but will she come with us? Will Miss Silvestri still be our guidance counselor? We already have to change buildings, but why do we have to become lions too? Why can't they become dolphins? We are losing our school, our teachers, our mascot, some of our friends, our school pride, and the other schools losing out. Everybody's panicking. It made me anxious to hear what they were saying. I didn't understand how from one day to the next, everything had turned upside down. When I went back to school the next day, it was truly a wacky Wednesday. Everybody was off. No one knew what to say or do. Some of my friends even said their parents were going to move or send them to Catholic schools. People were sad, anxious, and panicked. That made my own what-ifs get big. Ever since then, I'm not able to calm down on what-ifs. What will happen to Mr. Cole and Miss Dobby? They both left tenure positions to come to Middletown this year, and they are amazing. Will they be fired? Will they be okay? They're putting on brave faces for us, but I can tell every teacher that's on the chopping block is worried. Will Miss Moyer come with us? She's been teaching at Namathing forever. I want her to I know she won't lose her job, she will lose her community. What about Miss O'Brien? She always has a smile on her face in the main office. She always asks ask me about a book I'm reading. Can she come to be with us to be sure? Sometimes all you need is a warm, friendly face. Woo. It feels like everyone, my teachers, Mr. Herbert, my friends, everyone is putting on a brave face to help each other feel safe. Even my mom. Sometimes when I'm talking to her, she's looking off from a distance and looks worried and doesn't really hear what I'm saying. I know she's thinking about school stuff, but she doesn't want me to worry, but I can still tell. My what ifs just keep getting bigger. There are more and more questions with few answers. It's hard to see everyone hiding their worry to protect each other. It's getting harder to sleep at night because my worries hit me at night. My parents at school are all, my friends at school are all upset. My teachers, my parents, my sisters, everyone's upset but pretending that they're not. This feels too much. We need answers and space to feel our feelings. Everywhere I go, it feels like it's following me around. I moved to Middletown when I was going to be at kindergarten at Reimagining. Reimagining is such a welcoming place for kids, and at the beginning I moved, it was one of the only places that felt like home. And time again, I see new kids coming into Reimagining and making friends in a split second. Without having any trouble with bullying, and you can't close a place like that. So please find another solution to gain money and save our schools.
Middletown Board of Ed, you created those what ifs by your lack of transparency and waiting until there was a leak to figure that out. That was a preventable problem. But it's not too late. I've spoken with all of you via email. You have an opportunity to do things right, to support the social and emotional well-being of our students, and you have an obligation to do so. You created what she just talked about, and you need to help fix it. I just want to thank you all. You are being very patient and listening to us, and I really respect that. I also want to thank the over 500 viewers we have on YouTube right now. I'm a parent who cares deeply about the impact that this year's budget planning session will have on my 3 children. At the same time, I'm not someone who fears change. I understand that sometimes change, even if it seems scary, can be good, and I'm open to that kind of change. I do not envy the position that Dr. Alphone and the board have been put in. It's immensely difficult, the predicament. We're balancing taxpayers' contributions, state funding, and the increasing demand for competitive school offerings. And to be honest, I don't want to be the one who has to make those budget decisions. I'm grateful that you all are here to make those choices on behalf of our children and our community, and to make that plan for our future. However, from what I've seen so far, it appears that these plans are just an exercise to make the numbers work. I was absent when Plan A was presented, and I tried to catch up on what was happening, but I was left feeling like I wasn't keeping pace, like I was missing something. But as I learned more, it became apparent that I wasn't missing anything, but these plans were actually missing the plan part of the plan. A real plan should include a list of those impacted, the students, the families, teachers, support staff, transportation. It should outline what impact the changes would have on each group, how we can mitigate those impacts, and what resources we need to increase in response. A plan should include a detailed list of building adjustments required to handle the change, a breakdown of which rooms are appropriate for the new population, what facilities need updates, and what associated costs and timelines would be. A plan would tell you the increased transportation costs and the impact of the traffic patterns for school drop-off and pickup times. It should include population projections for each school and how these projections align with each building's capacity, including the impact on class size over time. It would map out which classrooms are suitable for each age group, where age-appropriated special classes like art and gym could be held.
There would be clear timelines for when families of impacted schools could tour the new facilities to understand how their children's day-to-day experiences would change. There would be an explicit mental health plan, especially since this is already a concern in our community. From what I've seen, none of these essential components have even been considered, let alone provided to the board to support their decision-making. Again, board, I do not envy your decision that you have to make. In addition to the lack of a plan, we seem to lack the data. I appreciate the ways the district has been generous in sharing the data it does have, the presentations, the user-friendly budgets. However, I can't imagine that this level of information is sufficient to support a major decision like renovating buildings to accommodate new student populations. To make such decisions, we would need budgets that reflect the actual cost per school. From what I understand, the district has never tried to reconcile the budget this way by looking at what is spent per school. This means if we're choosing between schools, we're flying blind on whether that decision is most logical or simply the easiest to explain. Fixing the staffing data. I think we're all here to be adults in the room, though. Fixing the staffing data won't be fast or simple, but if we want to make informed decisions, it's absolutely possible and absolutely necessary. So again, board, I don't envy your position, especially when it lacks that information required to make the right choice. It has also been made clear that as a township, we haven't utilized our available tax base to the extent that we could have. While other towns have kept tax increases in line with rising costs, we've maintained moderate increases. That may have benefited taxpayers in the short term, but we've now reached that very firm end of the benefit. There are no surprise funds, no global pandemics to mask the shortfalls. We are out of runway. And now collectively, we all are here to help find that solution. Dr. Alphone, board members, I do not envy your position. You're caught between several rocks, several hard places, some new and some inherited. So while there may not be an obvious solution right now, and there may be some obvious solutions that were presented, we cannot make this decision without the framework for how it could be accomplished. I truly hope that you see these faces here and you know the numbers who have assembled virtually in concern for what is our most important asset, our future and our children. Every face here is looking to you to do what we elected you for, to vote on behalf of what is best for our community. So I ask you, board members, please do not vote for a half-crafted idea as if it were a fully developed plan. If you are presented with a real plan, one supported by evidence and data, and you believe it's the right decision, then I trust you to make that decision. But in the absence of a real plan, of data, of evidence, please don't roll the dice on our children's future.
Before I get into my prepared remarks tonight, I just want to give a shout out to my 6-year-old daughter who's here. We've been coming up with a lot of ideas, and I just came up with another one, so everyone's probably my wife runs the spring plant sale, and unfortunately this has derailed that to a certain extent. I want a township-wide plant sale. I want everyone to buy their spring plants from their PTAs and PTAs this year. So good evening, my name is Jeff Warshauer. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all tonight. I would like to first lead with some current events that I believe are relevant and analogous to the crisis facing Middletown. The United States recently started down a new path under the current administration, with bold policy choices set to achieve ambitious ends. These decisions deviate from long-standing relationships and macroeconomic policy maintained by prior administrations for decades. Poor communication around these policy changes and business uncertainty have resulted in increased volatility in the financial markets and significant destruction of value. According to one Fed survey, the probability of a recession rose to 36% in January, while some analysts believe we are rapidly approaching 50%. As macro risks continue to grow, the future of the American economy remains unclear. But I'm here tonight to address the viability of any plan that relates to closing schools on April 30th. I believe starting down that path would expose the district, and by extension the township, to significant legal, financial, and reputational risk that could do unbelievable harm over the short and long term. The district is currently facing 1, a recurring budget problem, and 2, infrastructure and enrollment uncertainty. Please do not compound these problems by turning them into one inextricable mess. The prudent approach is to tackle the budget issues first, and then turn our attention to the structural concerns facing the district. The rationale behind addressing these issues separately is multifaceted. First, on the budget, the district maintains a high degree of fixed costs, meaning that it is largely inflexible. In a perfect world, should the district choose to pursue a large restructuring plan, it should do so from a position of strength, namely a budget surplus. Preferably, the district should have at least a balanced budget before moving forward with any plans. Approving any restructuring plan on top of a recurring budget deficit is imprudent, impractical, and unwise. Leaving the budget issue aside, because we will address that and already have, I will discuss why any plan to close schools on April 30th creates a lot of unnecessary risk for our school district, the township, and its students. There are several key points to highlight. First, solving a structural problem takes a lot of work and should involve input from all affected stakeholders. On top of collaboration, a plan should include other components such as research, analysis, forecasting, planning, budgeting, financing, and execution, among many others, each with its own set of risks. From what we can tell, it appears the plan is missing steps in the process, which could compound risks for the district and township. It appears the plan is working off incomplete and inaccurate information, compounding risks even further. To date, the district has provided zero evidence regarding the practicality as to how a plan to close schools can be successfully executed by next school year. These are but a few of the many concerns our communities have been trying to understand since the plan was presented to us less than 2 weeks ago. Second, I want to focus specifically on the financing portion of any plan that closes schools under the pretext of aging infrastructure. Capital must be raised to fund spending towards new infrastructure. And 2 pertinent issues jump out to me in regards to financing. 1, how are you going to raise the funds? And 2, how much will these projects cost? Raising debt capital will require either a referendum approved by Middletown voters or approval by the county improvement authority. The viability of either of these avenues remains unclear. Total capital expenditures is of tremendous importance as a significant portion of principal and interest payments towards the capital project will be added to the budget as an expense going forward. A proposed debt issuance to rationalize infrastructure across the district would likely be many multiples of its current debt load. This is why fixing the budget problem first is extremely important. Any plan to close schools will add significant recurring costs to the budget, exacerbating an already substantial problem, and could create a downward financial spiral. On top of all of this is the overarching reality that the U.S. economy is teetering towards another recession. So please, first address both sides of the ledger and balance the budget. Then tackle the structural problems faced by the district with all of us. Lastly, I would be remiss not to mention my family's experience with special education within the Middletown School District. So many caring people guided us through the IEP process, helping our children achieve academic success. My family felt supported by you, and we are extremely grateful. Let us work together to find a sensible plan for everyone as we move towards the April 30th.
Hello, my name is Ian Green, a lifelong resident and proud parent of students in this district. I will try and keep this brief. The way that the proposed changes were announced, I think we agree as a community were fundamentally unfair. Our community had virtually no notice and is now racing against a budget deadline to help find alternatives to the plan that was proposed. But what has not been discussed is that the proposal directly contradicts the board's own policies on long-range facilities planning and school closings, which say that the board, quote, will not commit itself to the closing of any school facility without first having collected and considered appropriate information, inviting citizen participation in the analysis of that information and the formulation of recommendations. It goes on to say that the information on any proposed district reorganization will be disseminated to the public, and public response will be invited by all appropriate means. Plan in just 6 weeks does not sound anything at all to me like all appropriate means. What you're proposing here may also run counter to state law, which could open up the school district to even more litigation should a plan with school closings be approved this year. So for goodness sake, don't force this plan down our throats. Agree to a plan that gives the community the time to have a calm, reasoned conversation where you can present all of us the data in an organized fashion and our collective input can be considered. Thank you.
Good evening, Middletown board members, Dr. Alphone, parents, educators, students, and community members. My name is William Dow. I'm a parent of a kindergartner at Leonardo, and 2 other students will be attending the Middletown Township Public School. I come to this forum as someone who can provide multiple perspectives because I'm a middle school teacher in another district and fully aware of the learning needs middle schools require and how to educate them effectively. In fact, how to educate them highly effectively, not to toot my own horn, but I've rated highly effective for the last 8 consecutive years. I begin, however, from a parent perspective. My wife and I have found a home here and a home school at Leonardo Grade School. It has allowed my son to thrive. The effective teachers, supportive staff, and parent community at Leonardo have provided my son with a strong educational foundation that he will take throughout his entire schooling experience. The kind of experience that every parent wants for their child. The community-based approach to schools, especially elementary schools, is one that is best practice. Having teachers, parents, and community stakeholders invested in the community allows young students to become comfortable in their surroundings and ultimately allows them to challenge themselves to improve academically, socially, and personally. Now from my teacher perspective. Managing 25 to 30 unique middle school age students, 12 to 14 years old, in a classroom is a task that requires commitment, hard work, and flexibility. And that's just the management aspect, not the effectively educating them, which requires even more of those personality traits: commitment, hard work, and flexibility. I see the budget numbers and the capital investments and all the financial terms. However, what about the human capital? What about the educators? How are the educators going to be supported when their classrooms are packed, their hallways are overcrowded, and the staff is unable to support the learning and social emotional needs of each student? I spoke to a teacher at this very school, Thompson Middle School, last week, And this teacher claimed there are classes here with 27 students before this proposal goes through. So all the district students are being impacted, not just ones who live on a specific side of the highway. I also want to thank one current board member who took time to speak with my wife and I last week. During this conversation, I expressed a concern about how the district can remain compliant with laws regarding special education classes and student-to-teacher ratio. LLD, POR, and ICR sections have specific ratios. And just because the classes can be 12-to-1 by state law doesn't mean that they should be. Educating middle schools requires careful planning and a willingness to adjust if necessary. For example, and anyone who's a teacher in here knows this, that sometimes a lesson plan will look great on paper, but simply is not working when it goes to be implemented. Similar to how a tentative budget may look great on paper, but loses its luster when it shows how it will affect real people and real communities. This also requires adjustment. This tentative budget also calls for $2 million to be allocated towards staff professional development. The state requires 20 hours for professional development each year. However, I myself know that I have accrued 40 to 50 hours some years in sessions that have mostly been a waste of time and money. Cutting PT sessions, or at least restructuring them, can provide needed budget relief. In my experience, the most meaningful professional development occurs when highly effective educators in the district run training sessions because of the knowledge these individuals have about the specific students and their learning needs. Furthermore, anyone who has ever taught or been a parent to a child ages 12 to 14, which I'm sure is a lot of people in this room, including the board members, knows the unique challenges kids this age are facing. Now put 30 of them in the same room at one time with one adult. My building principal often claims to parents that this is the age where our kids need us the most, but want us the least. The connection a teacher can make to students at this age can transform their learning, self-esteem, and future aspirations. Closing these schools makes it more difficult for the educators in Middletown to do that. Dr. Alphone, you stated, the district is committed to moving forward in a manner of preserving the quality of education for all our students. While these are nice words, we all know what speaks louder. Actions. The actions of you and this board on March 18th and your vote on April 30th will ultimately prove how truly fully committed you are to the quality of education in this district. Ultimately, it is our actions and our character that prove our legacy. So I want to ask the board, what do you want your legacy to be as board members? Because for a generation of Middletown students and parents, you will be the individuals who disrupted their quality education and uprooted them from their beloved community schools. After the March 18th proposal, a neighbor of mine claimed the American dream is dead in Middletown. Is this who you want to be? The people responsible for killing the American dream in our beloved schools or communities? Or do you want to be the individuals who preserve that? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Grace Wall, and I'm an 8th grader at Bayshore Middle School. I'm sure you all know how much I love and I am proud of my school. But I will be out of here in a few months. Then why am I standing here before? I need to address this situation because I have been fortunate to have a unique perspective on this situation. But first, let me tell you about me and my time at Bayshore. I entered Bayshore after 2 years of broken education following the pandemic. I was so incredibly far behind in math in all subjects, but especially math. My math teacher, Miss Roditis, met with me almost every morning before school to catch up with me. She didn't have have to come in early, but she did, and as a result of her foundation and Miss Tischler building the walls to my figurative math house, I was able to successfully hold a 90% average in honors algebra 1 and 4. Next year, as I enter high school, I will be taking all honors classes and an AP class. This is directly because of the love and dedication of the Bayshore staff. The staff at Bayshore cares so deeply about us and making sure we succeed. I'm not going to say other schools won't, but how can every middle schooler get what they need if classes are huge? Dr. Alphone, the Board of Education, and anyone in this audience, if you have spent a full day in each middle school this year, please stand up. I stand before you today in this auditorium as the only person in this room who has the unique view. This month, I was chosen as a peer leader to be one of 9 students from my school and only one from the 27 entire class of 2029 in Middletown to visit each school on an exchange program. We got to shadow a peer in each building, attend classes, and be a student for a day. This was an amazing program where I got to experience a very unique view into the other 2 middle schools, and this is what I have found. Coming out of Thompson on the first Tuesday of March, I cannot believe how crowded each room and hallway was. There was no room for at least 2 extra students to sit, as well as barely any space for us at lunch. Leaving Thorne on the second Tuesday, I felt that it was at max capacity within the classrooms and especially the hallways. The final school visited was Bayshore. If you had made it on time to our meeting to discuss our days and findings, you would have heard about all the amazing things we talked about at Bayshore. Some of the things we talked about was how organized, welcoming, and spacious Bayshore was. Anyone who has been in any middle schools in Middletown knows space is an issue. We can't carry our books, and since our backpacks have to stay in our lockers, we can't fit a coat. I know a lot of parents yell at their kids for not wearing a coat to school. Hallways are crowded. So we all know there is a problem. But what is the solution? Well, something has got to give, and every person in this room understands this. But closing schools is not the answer. We need to figure it out this year and come together as a community with a long-term plan. I would like to point out that this should include teachers, parents, and students. For reference, if the Girl Scouts of Jersey Shore can nominate an 8th grader to be on the National Girl Scout Advisory Board to GSUSA, I think our local school board can take the voices of their local students to hear what they think and help with an inside perspective. I also think there should be a few students sitting on the Board of Education, but that is a request for another day. I ask you to please consider pulling a committee of students, teachers, and parents to make a plan for the future. I spoke to my mom about what I should say. She told me that this is a forum to give suggestions and ask questions. These are my suggestions and questions. We have all heard that the township has purchased Modern Day to turn into fields for the town. What does every school have? Fields. Why can't we rent out our fields instead of the township relying on purchasing more land for this? Someone mentioned that the fields many of the schools use are in fact not in school districts. They belong to the recreation department. This might be something to invest in further if it's actually true. Maybe we should work on getting those fields back to generate funds if we cannot right now. In any case, this should be a way to generate funds. My question, how can we use the fields that we already own and maintain to generate funding to keep our schools open. I also dance competitively, and our dance competitions are held at middle and high schools across the state. They have newer auditoriums and beautiful stages. They rent these spaces every week to dance competitions. Can we look at renting the auditorium spaces to local performing arts groups? Could a new stage and auditorium be considered in a long-term strategic plan so we could rent these facilities and generate tens of thousands of dollars in a week? I know some school districts rent their facilities on weekends to Greek schools or Chinese schools. Other districts rent out classrooms for night schooling and adult education. Can we partner with some local organizations to rent our classrooms at night or on the weekend? Monmouth County Park Systems rent St. John Vianney to hold a variety of sports camps offerings. Can we try partnering with a group who would rent out multiple facilities and bring in more money? Can we invest in creating our own programs and camps to generate revenue and keep our athletes close to home? What about day camp? Offering quality classes to parents who need summer childcare but do not want their kids outside in 100-degree weather or need something with longer hours. Can we offer a quality program like Brookdale has, where we can rent our spaces and create local quality camps for working parents? These might include band, sports, coding, fashion design, cooking, and more. Now, what about cost cutting? Subscriptions to online books are probably quite high, and we have to pay per student per year instead of buying one book to last 7 to 10 years. Why can't we invest in some actual textbooks again? It's so hard to learn math from a website, and we would be able to use these books for a longer time. What about substitutes? Why do my sisters in elementary school have subs during conferences? Can't we change conferences back to half days or do night conferences? This would save so much money in hiring substitutes instead of making the teachers take a pay freeze. Could you bring back the elementary conferences to be done after school instead of during school hours to eliminate those additional costs? Could you reduce the pay of non-contacted long-term substitutes? Can we look at landscaping costs? Could we create a club or landscaping program in our amazing vocational program to teach students how to do this hands-on to give some on-the-job training? Can we use flowers grown by our students instead of buying things from outside companies? I competed this weekend for dance at a school south of here. As we were driving out of the parking lot, I noticed a huge field of solar panels. My mom said that Middletown has already investigated this. Where are we investigating solar energy as a source of our income? What about grants? Do we have a grant person who is getting as much money as we can? Can we consider shared resources? Can we share buses with local school districts also facing these same challenges? Could we waive classes like gym for athletes who participate in sports outside to reduce gym teachers? As an athlete, I'm exhausted after practicing 4 hours a night and could really use study hall time to catch up on work. We have an amazing special education teachers. I love getting to know the different kids in my school that have some challenges. When I visit their classrooms, I see how amazing their rooms are. Can we offer our programs as a tuition program to other smaller districts? You say we have the space. I know we have amazing teachers. Could other districts send their different learners to our schools? We would get more money and the students would learn in a warm, inviting place and get to be a part of an amazing school community. My mom is involved in special education and she mentioned it would be hard to bring students who are out of district back to Middletown because they might not have the right programs. But why don't we have the right programs? We have space and great teachers. Why can't we set up programs to bring our students back to the schools? In conclusion, please listen to the people speaking to you today, and please know that we, the students, are watching. You have our attention. About 30 days ago, a small percentage of middle schoolers knew the term Board of Education, me included, but we all know exactly what that means and who you are. Dr. Alphone, I would be willing to bet you went into education to make a difference in students' lives. You wanted to be a role model. Well, you have our attention. The students are watching you and learning. We have learned a lot. We are talking about this. We are talking about numbers and capacity and square footage and citing sources and budgets and planning. Our teachers are not teaching us this stuff. You are. We are Googling and searching and talking to our parents. If anything, this has inspired us to be more involved, be more aware, and ask more questions. We are the future voters, and we are learning so much in the last month. And that isn't really good stuff. Dr. Alphone and the Board of Education, let's sit down and figure this out together. Please do not close the schools. Please invite members of the committee, invite the students, the teachers. Let's sit down and work together because this is our education. You are affecting and our futures. You are here because you love kids and care about our futures. Let's do this together. Good night.
The board and Dr. Alphone, just remember that's a student of one of the schools that your plan might be closing. My name is Valerie Lekansich. I am a longtime resident of Leonardo. I am a proud Leonardo graduate and a proud Bayshore Middle School graduate. My son is a proud Leonardo graduate and hopes to be a proud Bayshore Middle School graduate. Mistakes are the things that drive us. Mistakes make us stronger and help us to learn to become better problem solvers. Some mistakes are little and do not have significant impact. However, every mistake needs to demonstrate responsibility, accountability, and empathy. It is what we teach our children, that it is okay to make a mistake. We teach our children there are small mistakes. That's why we have erasers on pencils. We teach our children when impactful mistakes are made, it gives us the opportunity to find new solutions. Work with others, and most importantly, ask for support and guidance. Our goal is hoping we learn from those mistakes so we don't repeat them again. Our children are always watching, regardless of their age, and they have proven that tonight. As adults, we make mistakes every day. Some of those mistakes are small and we move forward. However, the impactful adult mistakes directly affect the lives of our children. We spend a lot of time explaining and modeling to teach, to take accountability, to humble themselves and ask for support. When COVID occurred, that was a tremendous adult mistake, and it affected all of us. However, it mostly impacted the mental and physical health of our children. We asked them to do what no generation has done before. We took them away from their safe school place, told them to learn from a computer, and separated them socially from family and friends. They did everything we asked with dignity and resilience. They stepped up to the plate for us, even though they did not cause this mistake. The board could potentially make another impactful mistake. We are looking at our children and saying, we can't do better for you. Deal with it. However, this time, we're not looking for creative solutions to the problem. Our past board members left you with a mess. That was their impactful mistake. However, you made the mistake of not being transparent, accepting responsibility, and not asking for support to find solutions. The current proposal would once again devastate our children's lives emotionally, physically, and academically. As I stated earlier, it's okay to make a mistake. However, you need to humble yourselves and reflect. Dr. Alfone, you apologized to the community at the first forum. You talked about self-reflection. I pose to you, did you truly self-reflect on all aspects of this proposal? Did you consider all viable solutions? Mr. Capone, you ran on the slogan, children first. Is this plan offering that? Promises made, promises kept. Ms. Tobacco, you sat with an unsympathetic expression and body language at the meeting, as if you chose not to find a better solution to save our school communities. You've actually been quoted as saying you are disappointed in the fact that the community of schools have come together. That was hurtful. Today, I ask the board to reflect upon taking responsibility, humbling yourself by asking for support so that we can have a better plan to save our schools and for the future. In my 20 years as an elementary school teacher, also highly effective. My ideas are simple, but my passion and belief have always been steadfast in doing what's best for our students and children. Do we examine programs that you have offered in Middletown, such as I'm Ready, which is approximately $40 a student, times that by all the students in the district? Do we examine the cost of professional developments for teachers? Do they need outside PDs, or does the district utilize those curriculum supervisors who have been hired for their expertise? Do we ask them to run the professional developments? Do we pause at looking for new curriculums and programs that will cost the district money or pull back on the ones that save money? We give our teachers the opportunity to utilize their own expertise and strategies. Maybe we discuss with other districts in our area, like Homedale and Freehold, and find out how they balance their budget. We see if their suggestions would help Middletown. Do we speak to Mayor Perry and have a real conversation about how he can help our community? Does he offer his help for 1 year while giving us more time to strategically plan for the future? Do we consider putting more of our taxes, like other districts, towards school taxes? These ideas may be simple, and I'm not as fancy with the numbers. However, they may spark some complex and creative solutions. When we evaluate the budget, there are places where we can prioritize the needs over the wants. If we save a few $100,000 in different places, does that close the balance closer to a balanced budget? Just some ideas for thought. In conclusion, is this plan better for our students? Are we really considering our children's needs socially, emotionally, and academically? Are they really first? Will this plan be best for them? Are we asking them to pay for impactful adult mistakes again? We need to demonstrate that during difficult situations, we can come together and show them the importance of teamwork. After all, teamwork is the dream work. We need to keep our promises and put our children first. I know if you ask and humble yourselves, our school community
will spend the time helping you to save what we love about Middletown and our school communities. Thank you.
All right, for those in the room, there are 700 YouTube viewers, and for those of you at home, the room is packed. Good evening, my name is Ashley Stein. I grew up in Middletown, and I'm now the proud mom of twin 6th grade boys at Bayshore who live in Navesink. In case you couldn't tell, Save Our Schools has been hard at work. I would like to take a moment to briefly highlight the significant efforts the team has undertaken to address the fiscal challenges at hand. Because we haven't been provided with a more granular view of the projected budget, despite repeated requests, we had to use historical data. We imported PDF bills list from every month going back to June 2022 and created one large database. For my Excel nerds out there, it was over 30,000 lines of expenses. Based on this historical analysis, we've identified key initiatives that can effectively reduce spending and increase financial efficiency. The first one was gained by looking at the payroll data for the district from 2023 to 24 school year, which the state provided us via Oprah. I was alarmed to discover that the combined salary of the staff in the district office amounted to $7.7 million. This figure is notably high, especially when you compare the salary costs of individual schools such as Bayshore. Every single staff at Bayshore, including the principal, comes in at $8.5 million. How does it take almost as much salary to run a district office as it does to run a middle school? We propose a reduction of at least $1 million here. There are several approaches that can be considered to achieve this. The first would be to evaluate positions that could be absorbed by other roles. We also suggest restructuring admin positions, such as transitioning some to 10-month employees to reduce overall personnel costs without sacrificing the heavy burden that observations put on the district during the school year. Our second initiative is a request that Middletown Township covers the costs of police officers in the building. I would like to emphasize that this proposal does not suggest removing police officers from the building, as their presence offers significant benefits. We are so grateful for these officers who foster positive relationships with students and enhance our security in schools, especially those lacking vestibules. However, it is worth noting that last school year, Middletown charged the district $1.2 million for these Class 3 officers. We propose that the Middletown Township covers this cost going forward, as it benefits both the township and the school district. This request aligns with best practices in other towns across New Jersey where municipalities cover the cost of police officers in school. We need to work better with the township. I do not understand that while the township was considering purchasing Modern Day for $11.75 million, and the school district was agonizing simultaneously over a $10 million shortfall, that the two sides didn't come together to help each other out. The final initiative is to further reduce unnecessary spending. To those means, we suggest a thorough review of current consulting contracts. Two notable expenses that warrant immediate consideration are Jen Saravalos, who we went through to provide professional development on writing strategies at a cost of over $500,000. Given the size of our district, we should be sending a few staff to these types of professional development and then leveraging their expertise to conduct training in-house. This would be most cost-effective and foster a sense of ownership and continued growth among our educators. But don't listen to me, the 8th graders said it all. The next one is CLB Partners, which is a lobbying firm the district paid $30,000 last year. We should carefully assess the need for such services and whether this expense is essential for educating our children. Unfortunately, due to a lack of transparency, there are probably plenty more examples of misspending, and I implore the administration and the Board of Education to ask yourselves,
If these expenses were all made public, would you be proud of it? Together, that was about $2 to $4 million in savings, in case you're not keeping track. While these are our top 3 immediate areas to focus to balance the budget, they are not the complete list. We also have long-term ideas that could further enhance financial sustainability. For instance, bringing school transportation in-house could generate significant savings over the long term, especially if we train existing staff to obtain CDLs and use a stipend program for those drivers who would already be on our benefits plans. Additionally, transitioning to electric buses can unlock state and federal savings upon implementation, and we could maybe even turn this into a small revenue center providing services to adjacent districts as well. In closing, we hope that the administration will work collaboratively with Save Our Schools and the rest of the community to develop not only a fiscally responsible budget for the current year, but also a sustainable financial plan that ensures long-term success of our district. I ask that this week, as you further review the suggestions made here tonight, please spend your efforts focusing on implementing change and not poking holes in ideas on FAQs. Show us you want to do better by us. We look forward to working together to create a brighter, more financially stable future for our schools, family, and community. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Megan Alley, and I'm from the River Plaza section of Middletown. I'm here today because I care deeply about the future of our public school system. I also know there are quite a few River Plaza parents here that all care about every single student in this town. And quite frankly, no elementary school seems safe right now. My hope is that we can come together to ensure that Middletown doesn't deteriorate its education system. When you cut through all the noise, this all comes down to numbers and priorities. So some board members claimed that we should focus on the decline in state funding. But when you look at the facts, with the help of the Budget and Data Committee, state funding has averaged $16 million since 2011. We're not far off from that this year. But I was curious and looked a little deeper since it seemed like such a big deal. Did you know that state funding, even at its very highest, only accounts for about 8% of our total budget? When I realized this, it made sense. Strategically, if the board makes us wave our fists at that 8% over here, then we don't pay attention to the other 92% that is being mismanaged over there. And what does that even do? Is that anger being fueled to helping our children, or is it just to further divide us? It's very clear to me now that the real issue we're supposed to ignore is the majority of our money being handled irresponsibly, and instead of failing to plan, our board has planned to fail. I think we can all agree that we don't want to give this board any more of our money. And at the same time, it is clear we all agree that we still wish for our kids, our future taxpayers, to have an amazing education. We need our board to start taking responsibility for their actions and take a hard look at our priorities as a town, which I think we are showing today. Do we prioritize public education, or do we shift to running toward a skeleton of an education system? Many voters recently told our elected officials to increase our tax dollars for more open space. So as a previous speaker said, let's use those dollars to save our schools. If we want to prioritize education, we need to start now. Here's one additional suggestion on top of the amazing ones already suggested. Someone else mentioned asking the township or the mayor, who was appointed, not elected, to chip in more to share services. I took a look around neighboring towns to see how the township splits up their town levy. Marlborough, Colts Neck, Homedale, and Freehold all give about 65 to 70% levies in school. Middletown currently gives 62%. An increased levy can be done without increasing taxes if the township chips in and redistributes that pie chart that is on the handout a lot of you have. Now, this is not an easy option and not a perfect option, but the point is that we have options, and a smart community members here willing to lean in and do hard things. We are stronger together than if we allow anger to be fueled by hand-picked talking points. We should be fighting back together against the system and the people who put us here. We should continue working as a community together to save our schools.
Hi everyone, I'm Diana Paradis, and my husband and I have 2 children in district. The way these plans have been presented has been a whole lot of woo-cha-cha. Does anybody else know that phrase? When I was a kid, my cousins and I, we got up to something, my grandmother would look at us and she would say, I want an explanation, and I don't want a whole lot of who shot shot. And that phrase means you're deflecting, you never really plan to get an answer, you want to divide, distract, and even blame whoever's asking the question for asking the question in the first place. So, I haven't lived here all my life, and I wanted to go back. Some of you, even many of you, have been on the board since 2015, so let's look at facts. Not opinions, just facts. In 2015, we had capital reserves of over $2 million. In 2019-2020, we had no deficit. In March of 2020, Fort Monmouth School was closed. And I don't know what's happened to it since then, it seems vacant. In 2020-2021, we had a projected deficit of $2 million. Shortly before COVID, the Strategic Planning Committee was paused, and the last public update was in May of 2021. We all know what happened during COVID. Today's fifth graders had their kindergarten year ended early. I know you know, Mr. Cullen is sitting over here, and I still hear his daily messages playing in my mind. Good morning, right? That was like the daily entertainment at our house. Today's kindergartners weren't in school, but they weren't in play groups or preschool or doing any of the things that establish those core social and learning rhythms. Let's go back to 2021. We have capital reserves of almost $4 million. That's double 2015. The 2022-23 budget projection has a deficit of $3.7 million. So, okay, capital funds are up a little bit, but we're still running a deficit every 2 years, where every year we're adding $2 million to this deficit. By 2023-24, our projected deficit is now $7.6 million, and our legal fees are increasing 40% year over year. And the capital reserves that had been at almost $4 million are drained. They're gone. So, okay. These tax increases, because let's be clear, under no plan that has been presented do we not get a tax increase. They've been presented as some uncontrollable force that just happened. We have investigated ourselves and we did nothing wrong. But this situation was known. And if you want answers as to how we got in this situation, you get a whole lot of cha-cha. Now, our seniors feel pushed out. Our parents, who are under inordinate financial stress to begin with, feel even more pressure. 11% of Navissing kids and 15% of Leonardo kids are considered economically disadvantaged. And we're destroying our property values. These are our largest personal investments. So let's go back to facts. A firm called Collateral Analytics created a median home price series for housing stock across localities, and it was calculated by zip code, school, and school district. What it shows is that above average school quality is capitalized into the value of a home, just like an income system. And this data also suggests that elementary school matters specifically, driving the location of home buyers with children. Navissing ranks number 1 and number 1. We have taught our children that the adults in their life can't protect them even when it's in our own economic self-interest. We can't put aside what we want to give them what they need, which is safety and stability. Our community schools are just that. They're our community. It's where our parents know every single child in their neighborhood by name, because we see them walk to school every day. People advocate nationally for a return of this ideal of American life, but in Middletown, it never went away. We have it now and we never lost it. So that leaves me with a few questions. What happened to our money? Why didn't you mention all of this before the election last fall? Tell us about that before you asked us to vote on an open space initiative. I've seen something on TV. You can get the word out when it's something you want us to know about. So why didn't we know about any of this? Why is closing schools the first and only plan presented when it's so detrimental to our children, to our community, and to our own economic self-interest as a community? I haven't seen answers to these questions, but I hope that we get some soon. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Oliver Doyle, and when I learned that my school was going to close, I got really upset. I was worried because I have 2 siblings and only one of them is a name. I was also worried because all of my friends are going to be going to maybe different schools because maybe they don't want to be sent home for middle school, or maybe they want to go to a different school because they have different interests. So I'm afraid that if this happens, I'm going to lose all my friends. My brother's name is Augie Doyle, and my other sibling's name is Marla. My sister's in preschool, and if this happens, when she graduates up into elementary school, she'll never have a chance to get into the same school where me and Augie went. So I'm really worried that if our school does not get saved, when we have to move into Bayshore with all the other schools, my sister will never be able to go to Mason School. So I came up here to speak tonight and prevent the schools from closing, so my sister could be part of the Mason school, as well as me and my brother. This is really scary for me. I'm only 10 years old, so I don't really understand what most of the people who came up here to present are saying, because they're like, we need to do this number stuff, and I'm just like, what is that supposed to be? Because I'm just a kid. How am I supposed to understand? But all I really came here was to present and influence all the people in this room to not close the schools and save them instead.
Thanks, Oliver. Appreciate having to follow that. My name's Dennis Doyle. Last week, when I spoke to the committee, it was a spur-of-the-moment decision. And spur-of-the-moment decisions are not something I typically want to do, especially in situations of such gravity. But I was so compelled to raise my voice in support of this community who have done amazing things in such a short time, working through troves of old data to understand how we got here and how we can help inform a cogent solution moving forward. But that collective, ideally collegial effort can only advance with the support of all parties. So I appreciate that the board shared their proposal finally for the budget this year just a few hours ago. We are combing through the data as we speak to find ways to partner toward a solution. But taking a step back, beyond the obvious reflexive reaction to closing our schools and the impact on the amazing teachers and staff that we love, it's the how we got here that is particularly infuriating. It's hard to find an appropriate metaphor that effectively encapsulates everything, but the closest I've come is comparing this to visiting a doctor about an ailment, and their plan A is to amputate. Sure, it might technically remove the problem, but at what cost? And once you do it, you can't later decide that you made a mistake and put it back. The finality of such a decision requires close to 100% conviction as possible. And to get that conviction, you have to be looking at relevant, accurate data. But as many of us have shown, the data, the literal inputs for the requirement of such a monumental decision, are flawed. I spent the better part of my weekend going through the official budget numbers, like many others here, going back to 2018. I agree there are difficult issues with the budget, though many are self-inflicted. And solving these issues will require thoughtful but difficult decisions about priorities and capital allocation. The community is eager to have those discussions and devise multiple equitable options with you, none of which require closing schools in September. I mentioned that many of the issues presented in the budget are self-inflicted, most notably not keeping appropriate funding levels in line with inflation, even when inflation was low, not managing the rising healthcare costs appropriately, not revisiting or renegotiating contracts, not being creative with the existing footprint of human capital that the district has, and instead paying millions of dollars to send students to other schools at full rate tuitions. And on transportation, our high school students could write a dissertation on the nearly $30 million we spend a year transporting students on buses. Each of these are millions to tens of millions of dollars of line items on the budget. Addressing any one of them appropriately could close the existing gap immediately and keep our schools open into the new year. I say could close the gap instead of would close the gap, because until 2 o'clock today, the latest data we had was the unaudited proposed budget from last year. Thankfully, as I mentioned, the board just shared the proposed budget for this year in full, and we appreciate the olive branch. I'm sure the collective brain power of the community working collegially with the board can solve these issues in a way that everyone is comfortable with. In closing, I want to give my own olive branch to the board. I've spent nearly 20 years of my career in high-pressure situations, and I've absolutely made my fair share of mistakes and errors in judgment, though hopefully never making the same mistake twice. Everyone is allowed to make a mistake, but I was also taught early in my career the two most important words in Latin that you should memorize: mea culpa. Mea culpa means through my fault, or more colloquially, I made a mistake. You put your hand up early, say that you realize that you made a mistake and that you want to make it right. The board has made a mistake, and that's okay. They're allowed a mea culpa. It's okay because it's still fixable. The amputation cleaver is on the table, but the surgery hasn't started yet. But the first step is recognizing the error and having the personal fortitude to own that, to own the error in judgment made using faulty and incomplete data, to own the error in judgment made for failing to properly and transparently raise issues with the community in a timely manner. And channeling my inner bosses, anyone is allowed to make a mistake once, but making the same mistake twice is untenable. I don't believe the board or anyone else in the voice in this matter has any intention to harm students with this plan. But just because the intention is not to harm students does not preclude the reality or eventuality of that happening. That this decision, poorly planned, executed hastily, negatively impacts every student in the district, not just the 3 schools on the chopping block. And I will concede that change is inevitable over time. Maybe we pass a budget next year that keeps schools open, and we all sit down collectively, as I suggested, pore over the data, and come to the conclusion that some rationalization of the educational footprint is required over time. Maybe. But even in that hypothetical scenario, any change would take years, if not close to a decade, to fully formulate, build and retrofit, and here's the kicker, budget for. There's no free lunch. Even closing the schools in September as proposed would require millions, if not tens of millions of dollars in spending to retrofit the remaining schools. Where is that money coming from? And don't say the sale of school property, because if Port Monmouth has taught us nothing, it's that any sale takes years to see the money. Not to mention the town doesn't even own the land that the ABC sits on. So how are they going to monetize that? Solutions are not Excel models. They're not just a sheet of budget paper. They impact jobs and property values and small businesses and the vulnerable students who, at the moment, are being told to shoulder the burden from the years of mismanagement from a board who, with this proposal, has decided to throw them into the abyss of a half-baked idea on paper, than to have a hard conversation with the voting public about the monetary realities of running schools in this district. So please, I implore you, we thank you for the budget data earlier today. Let this be another step down the path to partnership to solving these issues. We're confident that we can pass a budget that keeps the schools open in September, and we have ideas. And then let's do the hard work of setting a sustainable path for the next generations of this community, whatever road that takes. Use this fleeting opportunity to cement your positive legacy in a town that you and we care so deeply for. Thank you.
have 2 little boys in this district, and I kind of felt like today was important for me to come up and speak to y'all, because I am a product of the schools that you are trying to force upon this community. I've been in overcrowded schools most of the time. PS 205, PS 99, stuff to look it up, very overcrowded. Let me tell you, if you care about kids or this country, there is no upside to closing schools. Right? You are applying a bandit that is laced with poison. And I know, I'm kind of approaching from a micro and macro sense. So micro, STEM, forget about it. All right? When there's a lot of kids in one classroom, we become herd animals. Okay? In our science class, during our science projects, you're lucky if a good number of them cut the cardboard the right way. All right? And, teachers have to move on. My science project, I cut paper boxes that looked kind of like a robot, and if you pressed its foot, it did this. She gave me C+, and passed me along, because I was one of 34 kids. All right? There's no upside to this, okay? If you are making a value judgment, you are objectively devaluing every child that you put into an overcrowded school, okay? Special needs. Special needs kids they're bullied mercilessly. The modus operandi becomes out of sight, out of mind. Anyone who talks slightly different, anyone who has a special disadvantage, whatever it is, mercilessly beaten. And they know when to do it. When the teachers, when anyone there, the official grown-up is not looking. Drugs easily proliferated. I myself did them. Okay? And I don't say that with any pride. But at least I had the good sense to stay away from anything that looked like a needle or a bulb getting lit up. And I saw that. I saw that almost every morning in my high school gym. All right? There is no upside to this. I'm going to approach it to you in a macro sense. You guys, I think, like America, right? I know on July 4th, everyone there is going to have American flag lapels. You're going to be adorned with American flags. You love America. I can't think of a more anti-American action than what you're prepared to do on April 30th. You just like a flag, the people who live underneath. Russia and China would love for you to close these schools. It is, I don't care what side of the political aisle you're on, because objectively speaking, you are making sure that at least this part and parcel of America has no viable future. There are very few success stories where I come from. And you are hurting American children on April 30th if you go through with this. Now, alternatives were mentioned. If you are worth your salt as a representative, you will meet with them. You will compare and contrast the alternatives. You will figure out a way to keep our schools open. And lastly, a guy gave a great speech and said, if you guys spoke to close the schools, might be a greater political machine. I don't think it's a great political machine. I think it's gone a little schizo. Because why am I here? I don't want to be here. I don't need to be here. I'm usually playing my PC at the end of the day. It's a problem. There's a mass political awakening in Middletown. I guarantee you, if you vote to close a single school, it is the end of your political careers. Up to you.
So in the light of your peer comparison, I am here from the neighboring town, along with others in the room to support the children, teachers, and families of Middletown. I've been a taxpayer for 30 years. I have no kids. I
have never begrudged the dollar investment that I made in our kids. I had great public school education, and I think I owe a debt to the following generations that they should have one too. Just have a couple more points. There's a bunch of Middletown residents that I'm taking their spots, so I'll be really quick. My experience with the Board of Education is really limited. As a taxpayer who has never had any children in the school system, nobody's ever here to communicate with me what's happening, how are my tax dollars being used to turn out a great next generation of educated students. I've also been made to feel really unwelcome in Board of Education meetings. And I think that kind of attitude has to stop. It's long past time for that to stop. And actually, based on everything I've heard, I attended on Zoom. Congratulations to everybody on Zoom for showing up. Good job. I attended this meeting last week on Zoom and heard what everybody's had to say this evening. And I think this board has a real opportunity to be the first one to create the kind of change that I would like to see. The kind of change that espouses the characteristics that have been embraced by the SOS team, the Save Our Schools team. Transparency, collaboration, communication. I think you could be the first to change your tone, and I hope we do it. Thanks, everybody. Good luck.
Hi, my name is Devin Rafferty, and I'll try to be brief. First, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to listen to mine and our thoughts and concerns, and to those of the larger Middletown community on what is a difficult financial and educational situation. I also thank those of you who have spoken with me. I would like to reiterate, however, in terms of, hey, let's see if the community can help us out with this. Okay, yeah, let's do that, sure. But it is not incumbent upon us to do your job. You're supposed to be responsible. The Middletown School District is at a crossroads with its school system. As I will lay out in the next coming minutes, the choice that the Board of Education has to make with respect to its AY 2025-26 budget is very simple. You can implement Plan A, which is neither economically nor educationally sound or coherent, which will also maintain the ongoing process and potential effort, whether intentional or not, of continuing to functionally fund the Middletown Township Public School System. There's also Plan B, we don't like that. Or we can implement Plan C, or whatever, right? Which would involve 4.1, an immediate pause and dissolution of Plan A. 2, the decision to take advantage of the one-time special increase in the school levy, which, to emphasize to those who are here and at home, would amount to an increased cost of approximately 2 appetizers per month at the New Monmouth Diner. And it is my understanding that senior citizens are largely exempt from it. I could be wrong, but that would stop polluting this district's finances dry and would actually reignite the process of actually funding our school system for our children. 3, pledge to begin tackling the district's longer-term structural issues via detailed public strategic planning sessions that operate with good faith, arm's-length community input along the whole way, so that when we're back here with our real redistricting plan, we can have an assortment of different stakeholders who all speak to that plan's financial and educational improvements. So that's the greatest thing, so that's the greatest thing since fire, right? Okay? After all, this current problem is man-made. So therefore, we as a species, you as a board, should be able to collectively solve it. Furthermore, if we're truly, this is kind of a neat little thing, right? If we're truly concerned about running a deficit this year, and that the sky's gonna fall, I would like to remind you that a year is merely the physical trip of the Earth around the sun via its orbit. And money in financial accounting is nothing more than credit and debit tick marks. +1, +2, -1, -2, okay? That means that implies one really has nothing to do with the other. Even the need to balance the budget each year is an arbitrary man-made rule, albeit one that's generally good to abide by, generally. But I do not believe for a minute that you realistically think the state will come in here and take over your entire district because of a one-year budget shortfall, especially when plenty of towns, as we've read, already have similar issues. And if you do believe that, it's time to move on. As I have mentioned already, but here's why I do not believe we should go for Plan A. I have mentioned before that it's a Ponzi scheme. It will lower property values, which means your revenue is going to go down, which then means you will run a deficit the following year, which means you will have to cut costs. Eventually we're going to run out of schools. We've done this before. One might counter that, hey, maybe property values won't go down, you know? Maybe there's even good reason to think that. Well, I made a handout. May I approach? Okay. I did this the old-fashioned way. It's a literature review. It took me about an hour. It's a literature review. I did it the old-fashioned way by looking through peer-reviewed, double-blind academic journals, and then I checked it through ChatGPT. The overwhelming evidence, as any of you can do on your telephones right now, ChatGPT, Google, or anything, just type in, do school closures lower property values? You will find out they do generally lower property values, and the collection of citations I provided are across multiple countries, multiple timeframes, multiple types of districts. The evidence generally shows, beyond any shadow of a doubt, I gave him one at the bottom where it says, like, it actually does go up, but it doesn't apply to Middletown, is that, ladies and gentlemen, you can agree to disagree. But when you vote and sign off on Plan A, you are signing off on what study after study has concluded will eventually be a Ponzi scheme. The best that you can do is hope that all of the academics that I provided you with, and it's only 20, believe me, there's a lot more out there. Okay? You can hope that all of those studies are wrong, but hope is not a long-term financial strategy. Okay? In fact, I just quote from a couple. School closures are often acrimonious affairs with uncertain benefits beyond the immediate savings in repair, maintenance, and operation of facilities. The possibility of other ill-understood impacts on the economic and social well-being of the affected communities is often pushed out of the frames. And in fact, the greater the distance to assigned K-12 schools has a negative impact on the value of the property. For assigned elementary schools, housing values within a quarter of a mile were 18% higher than those beyond 2 miles. Schools between a half mile and 1 mile were 17% higher. Assigned middle schools within 2 miles sold for 16% higher than those beyond the 2 mile range. So, why is this? Well, as somebody mentioned before, it's long been recognized that public schools exert an important influence on residential location decisions and the demand for area housing. I will try to be brief. This plan also raises unit costs of schools. Okay? Now, what does that mean? I handed it over to you. No, here we go. I pulled down enrollment data from 2023 from the Board of Education's website. And then I simply combined the sending schools into the proposed new middle schools and high schools. Here will be the difference between North and South. In terms of economically disadvantaged, South will have about 5%, North will have about 17%, for a difference of roughly 11.8. Racial makeup, North will be 78% white, South will be 83.3% white, for a difference of approximately 5.3%. The need for special ed resources, South will have 19.9, North will have 24.3, for approximately 4.5% differential. So, my question there becomes, and if that's already what we're doing, then oh my goodness. So, I would say that we're actually going to be creating an expensive middle school and an expensive high school, relatively speaking, or we're going to be reinforcing a public versus essentially quasi-private school divide. That doesn't really give us any educational value other than preserving student ratios. Okay? However, if all we're targeting is student ratios in an educational value, a robust educational program is created by more than just small class sizes. You have to have high-quality faculty, adequate resources, both financial and facilities. You have to have a mix of students who bring varied interest, backgrounds, and perspectives to the classroom. Think about what makes good, actual public educational value. Parental involvement is also a significant factor in creating this. Okay? Now, fortunately, there's an alternative. And I know that the levy could get into politics. But I have, or at least if you don't think about it apolitically, go into politics. But I thoroughly enjoy reading all of the ancient economic texts. And Adam Smith and Friedrich Hayek both would support using the one-year levy. In fact, they would be higher for it. They would be for it doing it permanently, because of both of them adequately, they thought that taxing the general public adequately, adequate being the key word, in order to provide society with a high-quality education that helps the next generation expand the division of labor and create community wealth, was a good idea. I'm not going to get into wonkishness with adequate budget and local fair share and things like that. But Middletown, for a large portion of us, we're a very well-off community. And then if you look at where our local fair share contribution is, especially around Monmouth County, we're not where we should probably be. We wouldn't be proud of that, I believe. So, what we've been having is inadequate funding of our local school system. And eventually, the governor told us on it. This is a 1 year, it came out of nowhere. I couldn't believe, no, this has been something that's been in the making for quite a long time. We have been effectively defunding our public school system. How can we solve it? As I mentioned, we need to get back to the drawing board. We should pause on plan A, take time, think about it, have real long-range community input. 1 year deficits isn't going to matter. And I believe we should get Mr. Capone to go back and obtain millions of dollars more in aid that the district had never received. That's what he ran on. For a moment, close your eyes, take a deep breath, try to remove yourself from personal feelings and bias from the issue of taxes. I know it's hard. The reason that we're doing this is because it's time that this town and its Board of Education has a professional, mature, economically sound discussion of how to fund its public school system, rather than doing the opposite. After all, the Board of Education is supposed to be looking after the educational value of the school system for its entire district, and the kids themselves haven't ever had a say in this. Thank you for your time.
Hi, I can tell you're getting a little sleepy over there, but natural consequences, right? So, good evening, everyone. My name's Talia Bauer. I'm here on behalf of the Save Our Schools Initiative Mental Health Department, or Alliance, whichever you want to call it, to educate you on the mental health needs of all of our students. As I mentioned last week when I spoke to you, I'm a licensed professional counselor. My children are not in these affected schools. Last week, I spoke about the numerous issues we already see in our schools, based on the current number of facilities we have. The unaddressed bullying, the substance abuse, etc., etc. Today I'm focusing on 3 quick questions. Question 1, how do you plan on supporting the students who are already struggling with increased fear and anxiety based on the instability that this exact situation has caused? When schools suddenly close, they don't just shut the doors on classrooms. They disrupt lives, fracture communities, and leave psychological effects that are lasting for many of these students. For many of our children here, school is more than just a place of learning math or learning how to read and write. It's their sanctuary and a source of stability. The research shows time and time again that displacement from a familiar school setting can decrease a student's sense of belonging, negatively impact their self-esteem, and increase the likelihood of disengagement from their education altogether. These risks are even higher when you're talking about students who are still recovering from the lingering effects of the upheaval of the pandemic, which leads me to question 2. What additional services do you plan on offering next year to help those already vulnerable post-pandemic students to endure yet another disruption? To ensure that you all understand what I mean when I say vulnerable, I went back to the research again. I reviewed a meta-analysis published by the Journal of Pediatric Neuropsychology in 2024. This research showed that following the pandemic, children and adolescents were left with increased feelings of fear, worry, depression, loneliness, and isolation. The results indicated that younger children had increased reports of fear and sleep-related disturbances, and that the adolescent population was generally found to have higher levels of stress, depression, anxiety, and had some more severe symptoms, including post-traumatic stress symptoms, such as disturbances in their sleep and overall appetite. I would love to see how you plan on addressing that increase in psychosocial issues, particularly in the middle schools, once there are higher student populations and lower staffing. Question 3. Do you know what the steps are considered to take clinical best practice in providing the appropriate social emotional support to our students during those consolidations? No? I thought so. So, I created an evidence-based starting point for you all to utilize in hopes of minimizing harm to these students. Your first step would be implementing well-planned transition programs that prioritize student mental health and foster a sense of belonging. Creating scaffolding so that students feel accepted and equal in their new schools. Step 2, you would establish clear timelines and be transparent with your expectations. Structure and predictability, as we know, can help students to feel secure during any transitions or uncertainty. Step 3, you would involve teachers, counselors, and families by establishing open-door policies so that students have easy access to mental health support. So basically, I'm saying you would do the opposite of what you've done in these past few weeks. Lastly, I know that last week when I spoke about mental health, I said it is not a numbers game. But I get the feeling that you guys respond best to numbers, so I'm only addressing a small number today. Over the past 3 years, we've sent an average of 50 students out of district annually due to our inability to meet their needs within the district. Each student that goes out of district costs us $75,000 annually, not including the cost of their transportation, which you shared with us. That is $3.75 million worth of out-of-district placements, not including the transport. Now, I fully know and understand that out-of-district is the only option for some of our students, but it does beg the question, what more can we do in district to minimize the number of students we send out each year? How does firing the teachers, guidance counselors, and paraprofessionals help to minimize or reduce that number of students sent out? How does closing the buildings with accessible classrooms for our special education population help? This issue isn't just a North Middletown issue. This is a district-wide issue. As a community, you must acknowledge that schools are more than just buildings, they're lifelines. When those lifelines are severed without consideration for the students that they serve, we risk losing more than just those schools. We risk losing the well-being of our future generation. Plan A, Phase 1, Phase 2, whatever we want to call it, they all eventually impact every single student in this district. So rather than ignoring the emotional and psychological needs of our students, why don't you work harder to be more cooperative, flexible, and honest? After all, isn't that what you're asking the kids to do? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Libby Kelly. I'm a my brother's here. I previously attended Bayshore Middle School and Leonardo Elementary School, and I have 2 siblings at Leonardo, as well as 1 in Bayshore. When reflecting on my time at Leonardo, I remembered when in 3rd grade I was asked to write a story about my elementary school. And today I have with me just the beginning of that story. If you want to learn about the best school ever, let me tell you about Leonardo and all the special days in the school year, such as taking principal to the wall day, math Olympics, fun day, and school story. I then went on to describe those special days, the joy they brought me, and the incredible teachers who shaped my experience. Some of those teachers I still keep in touch with today. But as I stand here now, I realize that those things, the close connections, the lasting memories, are a privilege that future students may not get to have. Not everyone is going to be able to visit their kindergarten teachers years later, because odds are they won't remember them. And why is that? Because with the proposed school closures and mergers, classrooms will be overcrowded. The ability to form genuine connections with teachers and peers will be lost. I know what it's like to have experiences taken away. We all did. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit, I was in 5th grade. I still remember sitting in Mrs. Fox and Mrs. Jenner's classroom for the last time, being handed folders filled with emails and Google Classroom notes. 10-year-old me was confused and unsure of what was happening. I didn't think it was a big deal, but I was wrong. Today, we face a similar situation, except this time, it's not a global crisis, it's a choice. If these schools close, future students will miss out on the kind of education that comes from personal relationships with teachers, from feeling known in their classrooms, from learning in an environment where they aren't just another name on a crowded roster. We have no control over COVID-19, but we do have control over this. So I ask you, are you really willing to take these experiences away from the next students? And is this honestly the best plan you have? Because if it is, it's just plans. Thank you.
Man, modern day, bad timing. My name is Eric Dowell. I have a 6th grade daughter at Bayshore, a 1st grade daughter at Navesink, and I would very much like to keep it that way. I want to open by thanking you for these forums and thanking everybody involved, both in the Board of Ed and the Township, for taking a step back after a fairly fraught meeting that feels like it was a long time ago, but I think it was about 13 days. And I also want to thank Dr. Alphone for your comments at the start, which we believe that everybody's working hard, the yelling's died down, sober minds have gathered, and everybody's trying to work out a make-sense solution, at the very least, for this year. I want to go through the plans very quickly. Others have done the same, and then offer 3 brief observations. With respect to Plan A, we don't like that one. We've heard a lot from different angles about how it would cause irreversible damage. It starts, but does not end, with closing 2 village elementary schools and a middle school. And I was confused when I first moved to Middletown in 2006, which makes me still a carpetbagger, because people would never say they were from Middletown. They would say they were from Navesink, or Leonardo, or Lincroft, and then it becomes obvious once you live here, that's what makes Middletown special. One point of evidence, our contractor, who grew up in Navesink, while I was standing in line, decided it would be a good piece of evidence to forward me a newspaper article of him as a 4th grader doing a protest sign at Navesink in 1982. That's what these communities are about. It's families that go back sometimes 6 generations going to the same elementary school and having that feeling of community. Schools are not just a pile of bricks where you can pick up the kids and take them miles away and expect the same results. It doesn't work that way. And it's not just 2 more schools. Say hey River Plaza and maybe more. That's what Plan A contemplates. We've heard about the overcrowding in the middle schools. We haven't heard enough about the insidious north-south hard boundary that would be created. That was something that was decided against when South opened in the mid-1970s, and it has been observed for 50 years since, is a very bad idea. And then, of course, the bitter cherry on top is that it's also a mass layoff of teachers, several dozen at least, and we have that list now. So it's a proposed policy that touches kids, schools, communities, and it's as if you turned all the burners on the stove on and then jumped on it. It's the things that people hold most dear and sort of have 100% approval for. Politics is certainly not part of this. What will cost money right away? It won't. You're not going to save money closing schools. We've heard that. We haven't heard how much it's going to cost to retrofit Bayshore. It's got a lot of zeros if we're going to do it right. We haven't heard of what it's going to cost to bus all the Navasink students, because right now Navasink is 50% walk. You haven't addressed what inevitably will be attrition. And one of the best things about Leonardo and Navasink is that it is economically incorporated. You have relatively poor kids and relatively rich kids who have no idea because they're friends and they grow up together. But what's going to cost a lot of money? The back end of Plan A, with the problem being that we have no idea if it will ever happen, much less when it will happen. Those numbers have a lot of zeros. And if you lose faith with the community's not going to support you with more of their hard-earned money. Plan B, it's a mass teacher layoff, which, thriving, successful, forward-looking towns, they don't lay off good teachers, they don't close successful schools. Plan C, it's not perfect, and we realize nobody likes paying taxes. I hate paying taxes. It's a fight between me and my wife every year. But any homeowner in this community should be laser focused on having great schools, because that is the biggest input into thriving communities. And great schools, they're not free. Plan D sounds pretty good for this year. Sell some property. It was fun finding it, and it's just sitting there. And then there's Plan E, which other speakers have talked about. We could use all the letters in the alphabet over and over and over. There are so many options to close a 5% budget gap this year, and you've done it before. Maybe a partial tax hike, maybe some of that township and county money, maybe a little bit more federal money. We know our District 13 reps are working on that. Some targeted cuts. But again, 5% budget gap does not equal destroying an entire school district. So 3 quick observations. Again, thank you for the forums. If they are actually serving a legitimate purpose, the unanimous message from these folks is crystal clear. Do not close our schools. And if Plan A somehow still winds up being the plan, what will that say about these forums and what they actually were? We sincerely hope this is a legitimate exercise. Second, just a little bit more detail on how Middletown, as a whole community, is put at risk. School closings with no legitimate notice, with unidentified school closings to come, accompanied by immediate massive rezoning, and this will be all the township talks about into November and into many Novembers to come. The airwaves will be full with this topic, and we will not be able to get anything else done. And then North will be pitted against South. You'll see a circular firing squad between different sections of Middletown, parents, taxpayers, teachers. To pretend that this is just 2 villages on the north side and it's not going to spread is a fantasy. And that makes for years of bad headlines. School closings, teacher firings, communities yelling at each other. That's not good advertising for Middletown. And then thirdly, I'll echo the consistent notes of optimism that have sort of threaded through these forums. A lot of good can come from this, assuming a make-sense budget passes in April. The outrage dissipates, and you've now got a lot of folks who are paying a lot of attention and have learned quite a lot about the challenges you face. That would result in more involvement in Township and Board of Ed. We've heard that nobody shows up usually, and I think you'd have a lot more company going forward. There was reference to a private, parent-driven fundraising organization to support Middletown schools. That's something that's been very effective in some of our neighboring districts. That doesn't happen if the whole community's on fire. And more involvement in the debate over state funding unfairness. We've heard a lot about that. It's only 8% of the budget, but we agree, it's unfair. Suburban school districts like this need to be treated better by Trenton. This group can help advocate for that. And then finally, on a go forward, there's a chance to have a more thoughtful and collaborative relationship between the community, the administration, and the Board of Ed about not just what this district will look like next year, that's the immediate focus, but about what it should look like with all of our input for the next 50 years. So let's choose that right path. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Marina. This is all foreign to me. I'm a nurse, so this whole situation right now. I just wanted to say I live in Madison. I have two small children, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. I have lived across the street from the elementary school since 2020. The proposal to close 3 and middle schools my children would go to and change their high school reception. So this affects every step of my children's educational journey in Middletown. Madison is alive because of the school and the people. It's beating hard. It was part of our decision to move into our home, and we've had pits in our stomachs since the shocking news has happened. We have spoken to neighbors in all stages of life and all are heartbroken. Some have spread tears when their kids have been in school for 30 years. That's how much it means to keep the lights on for the highest scoring elementary school in town. I'm appalled at the lack of transparency and consideration that TDC and superintendent have. We have a plan to close into streams initially, which caused a divide in residents, parents versus non-parents, north versus south. Just 2 examples. Since you're taking notes, I have some comments and questions I want addressed. I know some people already brought this up and I'm not as up to date on the committees and things like that as it needs to come out today. First and foremost, Dr. Collins stated that in the initial 318 meeting, planning for additional school closures in a few years. Which schools are those? I know we said the schools now, but you should tell parents now, if you do know that there are more schools in the future, they should know so that they're not short-sighted either. Does your demographic data include children born into fall 24 until early 25? You said the condos and townhouses were taken into consideration, but what about the ages of owners? Housing prices are high. Newly married young couples, I'm sure, were attracted to these new buildings and plan on growing a family. I have met so many families in my own neighborhood that have children not in school yet who were born 2020 to 2023. I want an independent demographic study, and I'm sure others do too. Does Plan C increasing taxes on the school portion at the highest amount also include laying off staff, or is it clear on that? I also think it was irresponsible for headlines to say a 10% overall increase on the tax for the whole property tax. That was meant to divide as an original option, which fixed income people had valid concerns about. There needs to be a diversified plan. You have to use a fine-tooth comb. Respond to the requests for itemized line-by-line spending plan for 25-26 budget before it's finalized. What vendors are using the contracts, I think so many people have already went through that. Also, do we have 5 principals in the high school? I find that kind of high. Can people opt out of busing for busing costs? Is it true that The budget, the Board of Ed budget pays the entire bill for security and police in the school, which is, I don't know the exact numbers, some people said almost $3 million. Initially, the town did share that expenditure. And maybe the mayor can get involved in that. And then someone brought up at the first meeting, who was a former Board of Ed member, report on the sale of the hit the books yet. I tried to look at this before my 2 small children woke up at 6 a.m. this morning, at the past budgets that were on the website. And last year did have a $2.5 million line in the Excel sheet, so I just wondered if that's it, if that's something else. And I also saw, I don't know if it's because of the aid or if it's grants, but last year there was a lot of zeros in the lines that previous years had numbers. So I don't know if that was something that wasn't applied for, wasn't available. Do you want to know those answers? Use every resource, every minute of your day, every ounce of your energy to answer these questions, because that's what's going on with us. It's on our minds all the time. Those people that are working on budget data, things like that. But what is the cost of budgeting middle school for 5 to 10-year-olds? My son, when we go out in public, he tries to use the restroom, he's got to hike it up there and get on the toilet. I don't want him to do that. What do you plan to have ready realistically for the fall 25 year that sets the kids up for success? It's mere months. And what are the transportation costs for closing 2 to 3 walkable schools and splitting Bayshore together in middle schools? Are the playgrounds appropriate at Bayshore as well? That's a concern. That's a safety concern. And have you ever declined state funding in the last few years? I want a clear answer. Navesink Elementary is the best performing and we want to dissolve it. Have you asked the principal why it's excelling? When we bought our house, we looked at the school ratings as potential hires. So this fallout had a domino effect. I grew up in Ocean County. There are lower taxes. Sometimes I had 32 to 36 kids in class, to be honest. This was not nurturing. It's only so much the teachers can keep an eye on. It's a discouraging experience as a student who wants to succeed. Thank God I have good family and friends around me. I don't want that for my kids, that's why I moved here. My brothers and I ended up going to Catholic high school, which my parents worked hard to make a reality for us. However, this can't be the next alternative for kids in Middletown. It's difficult to afford that, and we should all provide a trusted, high-quality education from the significant tax money we already pay. Private school enrollment also causes Middletown enrollment to decrease, which is not going to help any budget. I hope each board member has an equal say at the table. You sit productively with the Save Our Schools action committees. There's so many passionate, brilliant people in our town that have experiences that will foster an inclusive and worthwhile plan. A short notice rollout for fall 25 will leave children go through growing pains, anxiety, and educational consequences. And it's already hard enough to grow up. We all want answers to these questions as soon as possible. Thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Katie Littlepage. I am a NICU nurse at Monmouth Medical, and I have 2 boys who live in the district. I have a 4.5-year-old. He is registered to begin kindergarten next year at Reimagining, and I have a 2.5-year-old as well. And I wanted to begin by talking about the mental health toll that is already affecting our children. It's one thing for it to affect all of us, which it has. I know I'm not the only person who has jolted awake in the middle of the night and then my mind starts racing about these schools closing and I can't fall back to sleep. Can you just raise your hand if you're with me? Will you please look, Dr. Alphone? Please look at the raised hands, thank you. I want to highlight the mental health toll that's happening to our children. My son, who's 4.5, as I mentioned, he's in pre-K. And I've been to 3 out of the 3 of these Board of Ed meetings. The first one on May 18th, I was lucky enough to be one of the 180 people that was allowed in to the taxpayer-funded public meeting. I wasn't one of the over 200 people who was locked outside in the cold with police officers screaming to be let inside and have their voices heard at a meeting that they paid for. I've been attending all of these meetings. I've also been attending our government affairs subcommittee meetings. I've been very active on our Discord. I'm working on a fundraiser right now. My husband and I have missed the last 2 episodes of White Lotus because every night I'm up until like 10 p.m. and then I've got to go to sleep and I'm exhausted and I'm not the only one. I know everyone in here is. So all that being said, my son, who's 4 and a half, I picked him up from school today and I told him that Nanu, that's grandma, Nanu's gonna take him home after his ice skating lesson, and she's gonna give him dinner, and my younger son, my 2-year-old dinner, and she's gonna put them to bed. And he says, why? And I said, because I have to go to a meeting. And by this point, my 4-and-a-half-year-old said, to save our schools. My 4-and-a-half-year-old is already thinking about this. That's the mental health toll I'm talking about. And I said, yes, to save our schools. And he said, who are the bad guys trying to close it? And I said, well, they're not bad guys. They're just people who didn't do their jobs very well. And I said, but there's a lot of mommies and daddies and teachers who are coming to these meetings to try and help them do their jobs better. And he said, when are they gonna listen to you? He really said that today at 3 p.m. when I picked him up. So this is what I'm talking about. This is the effect on my 4-and-a-half-year-old. We've heard from 10-year-olds, from 5th graders, from 8th grade, every single student, thousands of students, not only in Navesink, Leonardo, Bayshore, but certainly in Thorne and Thompson, who are already overcrowded and are feeling the pressure of being more overcrowded. They're feeling this. All of the children in Middletown are feeling this already, and April 30th isn't even here yet. And so I'm asking you to please put your plan A in the garbage. And my mouth is so dry. I noticed that you have on April 8th an executive meeting that's closed to the public. Is that right? You can nod. It's okay. Is that right? Okay. I'm asking you, in the spirit of collaboration, would you allow, there's 9 board members, would you allow 9 members of the Middletown community to sit with you at that closed session? To then collaborate, because otherwise it's us versus them, and that's not what this is. You were all elected by us. We may have not all voted for you, but by Middletown residents. You were elected by us, and the plan A that you've come up with is not the will of the people. You were elected to implement the will of the people. We're here. We're here late tonight, and we want to work with you. So I ask again, there are nine Board of Education members. Clearly, we have a problem, right? Based on the hundreds of people who have shown up here tonight, and the hundreds more people who have been watching live stream, and the hundreds more people who will watch tomorrow because they might have had jobs like me where they're working 12-hour shifts and they can't be on a Zoom because they're too busy right now. So clearly we have a problem. So will you allow 9 members of your electorate to be in that meeting with you on April 8th? You will have an open meeting. Because the message from Dr. Alphone says closed. Okay, please make that more clear to the public. Thank you. I'm going to close with something that my husband prepared. He couldn't be here tonight, but I saw him typing away on his computer last night, and I said, what are you doing? And he said, I think I'm going to get up tomorrow and speak. He couldn't be here last minute. And I said, you? To paint a picture, my husband is one of the calmest people, most rational, non-confrontational. I think he's like allergic to public speaking. Like, I was shocked. So if he had something to say, I said, I'm going to go up and I'm going to say what what she wanted to say. And here's our story. 4 years ago, we relocated from San Diego to New Jersey. When I share that we moved from San Diego to New Jersey, I often get puzzled looks, along with the inevitable, "Why would you do that?" response. I typically brush it off, but inside I think, you just don't know how wonderful this place is. I understand that if your only exposure to New Jersey is through Newark Airport, it may not quite paint the best picture here, but here we have so much more to offer. We are fortunate to have a beautiful coastline, acres of wooded trails for hiking, numerous parks, and easy access to New York City. It seems like there are at least 25 playgrounds within a 5-minute drive, and it feels like new ones are popping up every day. I'm even coined a term for it, suburban paradise. And at the heart of it all are our community schools, which are a central focus for us. We are excited about the prospect of walking our son to kindergarten at Navesink Elementary next year. In my career, we often talk about one-way door versus two-way door decisions. A two-way door decision is one that is easily reversible, allowing teams or individuals to make those choices autonomously. On the other hand, a one-way door decision is irreversible, requiring buy-in from all levels of organization and careful deliberation. Closing our schools is a one-way door decision. Once schools close, there's no going back. I don't believe 5 weeks is sufficient time to fully consider the long-term consequences and explore all available options. I understand that balancing the budget is a significant challenge and the reduction in state funding is a critical issue. I saw a report today that Plainfield is considering a 36% tax increase, which makes our proposed increase seem much more manageable by comparison. Personally, I feel our taxes are a good value for what we receive. I am hopeful that a compromise can be reached, and I urge you to delay the decision regarding the reimagining of our schools. If we can successfully navigate this year, I am confident that our community will come together to find a sustainable, long-term solution. Thanks, Porter Little Page.
Hi everyone, my name is Daniel Jewell. I have a daughter, she's a first grader at Madison. I'm happy to tonight, and I sense just how physically painful it is to sit here for this long, so I'll try to be. So first I just wanted to start by setting the record straight about this 10% tax increase boogeyman that we keep hearing about. I know it's only been mentioned a couple of times tonight, but everyone I seem to talk to, that seems to be the only fact that's in their head is that taxes are going up 10%. But as the Budget and Data Committee has enlightened me to, that number only refers to the school's portion of the tax levy, not your entire property tax bill. So since schools in Middletown receive 62% of your property taxes, and we'll get to that number in a minute, a 10% increase in the school levy would equal about a 6.2% increase in property taxes all. But that's only if the town decides to transfer this one-to-one into homeowners. The other detail that gets left out in the narrative is the infamous Plan A. Also, that plan closes schools, redistricts students, and already includes a 4.8% increase to that school levy, or about a 3% property tax increase overall. So the real choice was never 0% versus 10%. It's do we want to preserve our neighborhood schools for 6.2% or destroy them for 3%? Which works out to about $21,000 per student. So how does this rank amongst our peers in the county? It turns out we're in the middle of the bottom half. Other towns, especially our peers, allocate well north of 65%, some even into the mid-70s. And their spending per student actually reaches into the upper 20s and sometimes the mid-30s, that's thousands of dollars per student. So just by some simple math, if we increase our share of our total tax levy from 62 to 65, or raising that 21,000 per student to about 22,000 per student, we can actually close this entire budget entirely without raising total taxes a single dollar. That's all it takes, a modest 3-point shift, just 3 cents more out of every tax dollar to protect what makes Middletown strong. Even with that fix, we'd still be spending less per student than most of our neighbors in Middletown. We'd still be spending below the average. We're not asking to lead in student spending. We're asking to stop being in the bottom half. So, let's be honest. Middletown has been underfunding its schools for years. And now that neglect is catching up to us. Students, teachers, property values. You can't cut your way to excellence. You can't redistrict your way to stronger neighborhoods. You can't build a thriving town by tearing down its most important public institution. So let's stop acting like this is the school board's problem. Let's put the debate where it belongs at the municipal level. Why isn't the town stepping up to protect the very thing that anchors its own values and drives future revenue? We expect every other department, police, public work, parks, to be funded responsibly, and why are schools the only ones being told to accept to decline? So this is not a choice between cutting or collapsing. In my mind, it's a choice between a town that's shrinking and a town that's stepping up. Let this be the moment we stop cutting corners and start investing in what makes Middletown strong. Not just today, but for the next generation, for our kids, for our neighborhoods, for every future homeowner who looks at this town and says, yes, this is where I want to raise my family. Let's send a message. We are not here to manage decline, we are here to plan better and build better for all of us, for every student in Middletown. Let's fund our future, and let's start tonight.
Hi, I'm Barbara Cassie. I don't have written out what I want to say. I just have some points that I hope those board members who are considering approving the current proposal given by the administrators, and I hope the administrators will listen to some of the ideas that I have. Because I'm thinking outside of the box with some of these. Kudos to whoever was that put them on the bills list and summarized them. I love that. I've always dreamt of doing that. I think that was brilliant. Never had the time. But I agree that the list that's attached to like the June or May board meeting, the non-bargaining personnel list, that list has grown over the years. I've been attending Board of Ed meetings for way too long. I have heard that, yes, those district personnel are needed for doing evaluations of teachers, but we now have AI and ChatGPT. We can just feed in for teachers with tenure. Those evaluations just go and sit in a file anyway. So we don't need so many people, or we can find a more creative way to do those. We need to look at some of those supervisors, directors. It's just grown. It's like a new thing is added at every board meeting or every third board meeting. I don't need the fancy videos on the website done by administrators. I'll get to the end, but I think it's important for Middletown to continue to be the great town that it is, and certainly keeping the schools open as part of it. The list of repairs to the building, that to me looks like that building wish list that comes out every year. It's a wish list, a big week of repair, everything in every building. I would like to see that audited. When people talk about auditing something, that building wish list needs to be broken down into the must have now, and can wait. Because I don't think that is accurate in putting in expenses. As far as transportation goes, transportation is a biggie. Transportation is complex in this town, in Middletown, and it'll only get more complex when Chapel Hill Road, when that little bridge is closed for the next 2 years. As So it almost seems to me like the plan is, well, we'll take everybody on that side of the bridge and make them go that way, and we'll take everyone on this side and make them go this way. Well, that's not a reason to justify closing schools and doing what you guys are talking about. Versatrans is the company that does our transportation. They come in and they do an audit every 3 years, pay them extra, I believe. I really want them to take a big look, a deep dive into Middletown transportation, and perhaps we need to ask the state for special dispensation, because I know we report numbers to the state, but I'm pretty certain they're just kids assigned to the routes, not actual usage. And, you know, like the person said, you know, if you totally reject your transportation to your school, which also means private schools, you're supposed to be paid like an in lieu of amount. But there might actually be families in this town, you might be able to see savings by people who say, I'm not putting my kid on that bus for one reason or another, you know, the neighborhood bully or whatever, and you might be able to save on that. I've heard before that a lot of the IEPs are fought by the district because they go to due process eventually, and then if they go to due process and the case is lost, that it is paid for by an insurance policy. I'm wondering what the premiums are on that insurance policy, and can we see lower expenses, lower legal fees, and lower premiums by maybe not fighting so much? I mean, maybe we just have an extra high number of students, kids who need supports, and maybe that's an item, a data item that can be shown to the state, and we can receive additional fundings for that. When we got the new roofs, of course, we had that referendum, and we sold those bonds, and I believe the bonds are coming, you know, we've almost paid them all off. Why wasn't that considered? And if that is being considered, great. Get that paperwork in soon, because I know there's dates. Now, as far as revenue, I didn't see anything in the proposal with new, like, population data, projections of population. But I do see a lot of very expensive homes in Middletown Walk. I don't know if anybody's driven by there, but there's a lot of homes that is not for 65 plus. Those are, you can just drive by and see the plastic toys outside of the houses. Those people are gonna be sending their kids to Middletown schools. And boy, the base that they're paying for those places, that should generate some revenue. Where is that? How are you're gonna close schools right when that's being built? I don't know, it doesn't seem smart. And yes, the county and town, both are willing to, we learned the other day, are willing to pony up money, or pay money to demolish modern-day prep, which I know a lot about. I had a kid graduate from there, and I'm wondering, why wouldn't the county, like, if you guys could reach out to politicians in particular, to your county politicians, and talk to them about the funds that they're gonna spend and give towards that, and it really is county more so than town. Why wouldn't it behoove them to maybe buy that extra property from the Board of Ed, or do something to help the public schools around here? Also, we have some very wealthy individuals that live around here. I know it's not typical for a public school to ask for money from private individuals. Well, let's do it. Let's not close the schools. Let's see if we have some individuals and that's and also, the COVID bump. During COVID, people were locked down and were together, young people. Those kids are turning, like 5, 4, they're coming, okay? They're gonna be hitting the schools, and it's not a good time to close schools. And that's all I have to say about that.
My name is Sonia Caprio, and I know I spoke at the last meeting. What has changed in my life just today is that my second daughter that I said was looking at Middletown just signed a contract for a house in Middletown. So now I have 2 daughters and I want to be a grandma soon. What I have to say is not personal. I'm going to start mentioning maybe some exact titles that I know when my 2 daughters went to South, for example. I'm old enough to know that desperate times call for desperate measures. I've worked for companies where people have to get let go, and it's just a sad thing, but it's a reality. And here is just 2 examples that I've wondered for a very long time. When I went to school, I grew up in Hazard, so I went to Granite High School. In my age group, we were an influx of the young kids that came into this area because our parents were moved from New York here too, in the 60s, right? But when I went to high school, and we had a large graduating class, besides the underclassmen, we had 1 principal, 1 vice principal, 1 school nurse, and a secretary. And it seemed to work. What does the vice principal of attendance do? That we have 2 of them, if they still exist, because like I said, I'm almost 20 years out. But in South, we had a vice principal of attendance and a vice principal of athletics. I don't know what they really do, and like the other woman said, sometimes things just grow and get out of balance, but maybe we need to get back to basics. We have to start looking at what doesn't work anymore. Maybe it worked 10 years ago, maybe it worked 20 years ago, but maybe we need to start cutting the fat, and I know we've all heard it everywhere in our lives, but maybe it starts at this level too. I'd rather, be honest with you, I'd rather a teacher teaching arithmetic, science, or English than a vice principal of attendance or athletics in my school. So like I said, it's not personal. Like I said, I don't know what people hold these titles, if they're even in existence anymore, but we have to start looking. And like I said, I'm old enough, I work for companies. That's what starts to have to happen when things like this start happening. And it's just an unfortunate, realistic thing, but cut the fat. That's the bottom line. We have to start cutting fat. So, and our children can't do the fat. That's the whole thing. And I just hope, like I said last time, that we find some kind of middle ground to all of this. And just so everybody knows, I know these leaflets say that, all senior citizens get the senior freeze. Some of us are still 2, 3, 4 years out from that. So just because we're retired and on fixed income doesn't mean we're getting all the perks yet. And if you start also looking at the percentages, if these things keep going up and the state doesn't raise what the limits are in that, then our margin starts going like this too. So it's it's just a very horrible situation for everybody. All right, thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Hi, I'm Vera Pasaki. I swore I wouldn't speak tonight, so I have nothing prepared, but a few things were said that kind of made me a bit twitchy. I just want to talk about the north-south divide. I would say it's not the administration that causes the north-south divide, it's us. It's the community, the people. Just for history's sake, I just want to make sure people understand, and again, I'm tired, so if I don't sound warm and fuzzy, I apologize. But when my daughter entered the district almost 20 years ago, her class sizes were 28, 30. Class sizes that everybody here is cringing over, okay? So I said, I'm gonna get involved. Got involved, met wonderful people in the community, listened to other people talking about their class sizes and worrying about combining a class of 11 and 13. So we fought and we said we need to cap that elementary school at 25. And they agreed, capped at 25. Woohoo! My son came in, largest class ever to come into his elementary school. In 2nd grade, I raised my hand and I said, Houston, we have a problem here. Got 5 sections at 25, every other 2nd grade that feeds into Thompson has the same issue. We went through trying to look at it in 2014 and 15 with redistricting, then again in 2019, 2020. And quite honestly, nobody cared. nobody cared. So Amy came to Thompson with 1,100 kids. And if I back up a little bit, when he was at Nut Swamp with the 25 kids, to make it work, they had to split classes to make gym. If new people came into the school, they got redistricted to other schools because they couldn't fit them. So, you know, my kids were at South when there were 1,600 kids, okay? And on top of all that, you know, I had no skin in the game. I fought for Port Monmouth. I had no skin in the game, but when they closed the trailers at Navesink, I fought for the special needs classes that were getting kicked out, and watched one of our friends with cerebral palsy get moved to his 3rd elementary school. And this is something we can't, I love the passion, but you guys can't go away. You can't, if people get their way and it doesn't impact them, you guys can't just walk away. Okay? Because we have been suffering with class sizes and all these issues that you guys find horrendous. I saw a post that a parent was horrified that her child was in a class with one teacher and 21. I would have died for that. My youngest, who has special needs, she came to Thompson, and she was an in-class resource, 2 teachers, all her 4 classes were 30. And you know what? She did well. The teachers were wonderful. But I'll give you an example. A friend of mine texted me, and I said, remind me what schools your daughter went through. She went through New Monmouth, Lincroft, Village. Then they wanted her to go to Thorne, even though Thompson was her home school, and they fought. And they got a program set up in Thompson. And then she went to South. And then when my son came in, that program that she fought so hard for got tossed because they couldn't fit the kids with special needs. So now we have our kids that zigzag across the district. And I know it's a smaller population, it tends to be a quieter population, but we can't forget everyone. So please, I've got one foot out the door now. I'm almost done, so pass the baton, and I hope you guys keep the passion and support everybody because we are on Middletown. And this is a Middletown issue.
Hello. I got here pretty late. I was coaching Little League, coaching 6 and 7-year-olds, a lot of them who this is going to impact. And it was interesting talking to them. You know, they're joking around, they're playing like they're packs of wild dogs in the dirt. But I did hear a few of them asking each other, hey, what school do you go to? And if this was a few weeks ago, I would ignore that and think nothing of it. But I thought that was really interesting because one of the players said, I don't know. And then I don't know if he really didn't know or if he was talking about what's happening here. But because I was at Little League, I missed most of this night. But what I've heard from a lot of the people, since I've been standing in that really long line, is that I think it's abundantly clear that everybody's asking for the best plan right now. Everybody's asking for the one thing that's the most valuable thing that we can have as a community, and that thing is time, right? I think, you know, formally or informally, I've sort of been tasked with working with everybody out here to come up with alternative plans. And I don't know that there's an alternative plan that we can present to you that's going to make any sense. I think all that's going to do is essentially do what the plan that you presented to us did, which come across as a plan that maybe is well-intentioned, but wasn't as well thought out as we perceive it to be. I'm not saying that it wasn't well thought out, but when you get heads up 3 hours ahead of time that there's a plan, and that's most likely going to be the plan, and we have a few weeks to react on it, I think what you get is what you've seen, right? So for me to come up here and say, here's an alternative plan that makes sense, or here's an alternative plan that makes sense, I don't think that's the right thing to do, because the best plan for right now at this moment is going to be a plan that's going to allow us to imagine that future that you've probably imagined yourselves, right? We don't know what that is, but you know, to get there, the most precious thing we can have is time. So listening to everybody that's been here since I've been here, the commonality is that I think the best plan for you guys to really think about is a plan that balances the budget. Yes, maybe it's not easy, but it can be done. It's a plan that keeps the doors open. I love the analogy of the tall guy, Dave, I don't know if he's still here, about the amputation. It's a great analogy, right? And I think it's a plan that gives us that extra year to work with you, or to at least listen to your plan, to understand your vision, so that we can get behind it if it makes sense, or poke holes in it if it doesn't make sense, right? So I think my final ask, because I want to shut up and let everybody go home, I'm tired, I want to go to sleep, is think long and hard about a way that you can develop a plan that sort of keep things the way they are, and that includes all of us to sort of serve as a sounding board for what you're trying to accomplish. Because we still don't feel as though we know what you're trying to accomplish. So I'll leave it at that. Figure out a way to balance the budget, figure out a way to keep the doors open for now, right? Maybe that's not the long-term solution. I think it might be. And just let us participate. Let us lend our voices and give you our ears to find a plan that we can actually get behind and feel really proud of. Because I think it's silly that we're having these conversations. A few years ago, I jokingly said to my wife, you know what, I'm gonna run for school board one day. And I thought all of the conversations I'd be having would be about how do we make classrooms amazing? How do we make curriculum brilliant? How do we make our children just great people, intelligent people, creative people? And that's what I thought you guys talk about all the time. Obviously, we've learned that there's a lot more that goes into it, but I just want to, bring it to the forefront that the objective of any plan that gets presented in front of us, the very first objective should be how do we provide the best education, the best academic, the best social experience for our kids. And that's something that I haven't heard in any of the plans, which is silly, right? That's why you guys got into what you're doing. How do we make Middletown schools the best schools in the state? How do we make them the district that other towns aspire to be? And I feel like we've just gone about this the wrong way. So again, I ask that you figure out a way to balance the budget, keep the doors open, provide that runway so that we can truly develop a plan together that is going to provide that reimagined Middletown that we all want to be a part of. So I'll shut up. Everybody go to sleep. Thank you.